Spatial malfunction. Underworld. Which do you prefer, guys? 2 chapters a day with 2,500-2,900 words each, or 1 chapter that consists of 4,000 words? Also throw some stones, will ya? Dash. The training that Reinhard conducted for Veldora has finally ended. The two are now standing beside each other with Veldora in his human form. Reinhard made sure that he can control at least that much. A crazy thing though is that there are close to no magicules roaming around Veldora's body, showing just how much in control he was. Although reluctant to accept the training first, he eventually gave in to the promise of power. With how Veldora is right now, it might even be possible to win against one of his 2 sisters. That is if he won't falter. Remember, my dear uncle, the statement that says, destruction is the solution can be considered useless unless you are me. In the whole realm, only me has the authority to claim those words. If you wish to spread destruction, then you should know love first. I am certain that your sisters can teach you that. Reinhard gave Veldora a side glance as he spoke. He has no wish of letting Veldora's potential go to waste. Because when he thought about it, Velzard and Velgrin's skills were far too mundane compared to Veldora's probability manipulation. What is ultimate offense and ultimate defense when one can simply change the effects of things? No matter how fast Velgrin's cardinal acceleration, it won't work if the chance of hitting Veldora is turned into 0%. That is how broken it is. Also the reason why Reinhard decided to nurture him. He wishes to analyze Veldora's powers in the future. Honestly, when one would ask Reinhard what power he really wishes to obtain in this world, it would be Xian's skill, without a doubt. Forget probability manipulation. Direct control of cause and effect is more insane. Sigh, how many times have you mentioned that already? I understand, alright, I want to at least retain some dignity, even if just small. Veldora sighed as he grumbled in resignation. Reinhard was too hard on him, scraping him of all things including pride exhausted Veldora too much. He can't live this life. If this is not the final day, then he might have directly cursed Reinhard, but sadly he needed to behave today unless he wanted to ignite Reinhard's petty nature and extend their stay. Reinhard glanced at Veldora and didn't speak for a whole minute, grinding Veldora's nerves. He is worried that he might have really pissed Reinhard. Thankfully, the worst didn't happen. Reinhard actually let it off. Prepare yourself for the journey, Reinhard informed Veldora, who stared at him ludicrously. I would really be afraid if we only didn't destroy many solar systems during our stay here. What's crazy is that this bastard nephew of mine kept getting stronger by eradicating a whole planet full of pitiful souls. How is he doing that? Veldora thought. Just like he mentioned in his thoughts, Reinhard actually accumulated millions of souls, surpassing his previous numbers. His count is far too much. If the original Reinhard has a count of 28 million, then he right now has an amount almost reaching 100 million. The number of planets he destroyed in the name of love cannot be counted by fingers anymore. He is a madman in Veldora's mind. No matter how crazy his sisters are, informed by Reinhard, they couldn't possibly outform this freak of a nature. Just when Reinhard was about to move, Raphael's voice rang into his head. Fully understanding of the concept of space has been succeeded. Unique skill, relocate, has been obtained. Reinhard raised his eyebrow in intrigue. He never bothered Raphael before. She was just left to discover whatever she wants and is free to do so. She is useful when integrating souls, though Reinhard is actually using her to destroy every memory that surged into his mind, releasing him from the burden. He also ordered Raphael to divert the voice of the world's attention so that he won't accidentally evolve. Who knows what might happen? Should he lose control, then that would be the end. He prefers to evolve using his own means. Come here, Reinhard called out to Veldora, who was suspicious of that. He wondered what kind of wicked idea this monster had conjured again. Nonetheless, he still got closer and was alarmed when Reinhard's hands were placed on his shoulder. He shuddered, but not from fear, it was from the trauma he experienced before. Veldora might not know, but he is actually the gutsy person in the whole world right now. Reason. He can finally withstand Reinhard's aura, albeit suppressed. What is it? He stuttered. Reinhard gave him a dead look as he shook his head. Don't ask questions, we're going home. He didn't hesitate and used his new unique skill to transfer both of his and Veldora's body into the cardinal world. It was an instantaneous phenomenon and there was no time lag either. Of course Reinhard could only do that because he has Raphael to calculate the coordinates. The two vanished from the place, not knowing that their abundance of magicules were creating some abnormal-looking creatures. Veldanava is currently resting on his own realm, watching his world flourished by time. He can't help but feel proud of how it progresses, and he has everyone to thank for it. He is having tea with his own sisters who were already reincarnated decades ago. The two are still complaining about how Reinhard was too hard on them. They were his aunts. He can't just needlessly kill both of them. Though, that is just a way for them to heal their wounded pride. Never did they expect that they would be killed by a mere newborn. However, since that newborn was their brother's child, then they can reluctantly accept it. Brother, where is he now? I want to teach that guy a lesson. Velgrind asked Veldanava, who twitched his face from the question. He has already heard this question many times now. As I said, he's currently away training. We don't need to disturb him, right? He asked while smiling wryly. He just can't understand why these two are so adamant to see their nephew. It might be because they are angry at him, but Veldanava has a feeling that it is different from that. Training. Does he need such a thing? He is only second to you in terms of raw power, right, brother? He also has 2 ultimate skills you have bestowed on him. What can he want? Velzard raised her eyebrow, stating that Reinhardt is far too overpowered in her opinion. After all, she believes that he has no reason to search for more power with how much he possesses. Well, Reinhardt thinks differently from how you two do. He is always on edge, thinking that there will be creatures that are more powerful than him in the future. Veldanava couldn't help but appreciate that mind of his. Velzard and Velgrind were dissatisfied with that, but they had no choice but to adhere. Anyway, can't you just give us the coordinates, brother? We would like to visit that problematic nephew of ours. He has quite the nerve to send that message to us. He didn't even appear in our reincarnation. How infuriating. Velgrind opened her hand and demanded it from Veldanava. The man, on the other hand, could only sigh from how unreasonable these two are. He was about to reluctantly hand it over when he sensed something dangerous about to descend in the cardinal world. There is only one person he deemed dangerous in the entire universe he created, which means that he has returned, Veldanava muttered, smiling lightly. He has also missed his son. They have been separated for 240 years after all. It might be a small amount of time for them, but still valuable. What? Where? Velgrind and Velzard both shouted. They immediately used their skills to inspect the cardinal world, however they were confused when they spotted no presence of him there. Huh, did you sense wrong, brother? Velzard questioned with confusion. Veldanava raised his eyebrow at the place where Reinhardt dropped. He concluded that it is the first time of him using teleportation from great distance. I guess I was wrong. He didn't bother to change their minds, as it would be troublesome to explain. What he didn't expect, though, was for the two to realize his reaction. Brother, you're thinking that this is a problematic situation, right? He's really here, right? Where is he? Velgrind got closer to Veldanava as she demanded. Velzard was quiet, but she was also giving him stinky eyes. Ah. Sigh. He is currently in the underworld right now along with your new brother. Veldanava has no choice but to reluctantly reveal the truth. Still, he was fairly interested in how Reinhardt ended up in the underworld, though. There is no way that this is an accident. Underworld. I see. Wait. What? Brother. Why have I never heard of this? A new true dragon was born. Velgrind spoke but finally comprehended Veldanava's words. That's right, dear brother. How come words hadn't reached us? It has been a few decades since we were reincarnated, right? Care to explain? Velzard squinted her eyes as she pressed on Veldanava. I didn't mention it. Haha, it must have slipped my mind. He tried to escape the situation by saying that, but sadly it was hardly effective. Brother. Reinhardt, where are we? Veldora was unsure of the situation. His supposed nephew just grabbed his shoulder earlier and they instantly arrived at this place. The atmosphere in this place was so wicked that Veldora started to feel annoyed. The person he asked, on the other hand, was also analyzing the situation. Raphael. He thought as the skill swiftly went to action. Report. Master's unique skill wasn't able to penetrate Lord Veldanava's protection towards the cardinal world, resulting to diversion of the location. I see. Unique skills are failures. Do your best to alleviate it. I will be waiting for your report. Reinhardt closed his thoughts with that. He has no interest in lingering around, so he started inspecting his surroundings. He spotted a castle a few miles away, so he took that as his destination. With just a few steps, Reinhardt's body reached its destination. Meanwhile. The castle of shadows loomed over the desolate plains, a jagged obsidian silhouette against the bruised twilight sky. Inside its colossal obsidian gates, an unending silence reigned. Dust motes danced in the pale slivers of moonlight that pierced the cracked and cobweb-draped windows, illuminating the vast emptiness of the grand hall. Upon a raised dais at the far end, Blanc, the primordial of white, sat engrossed in an ancient tome. Her long white hair, like a frozen waterfall, cascaded down her back, a stark contrast to the dark throne she occupied. The only sound was the rhythmic rustle of turning pages, a monotonous counterpoint to the oppressive stillness. Suddenly, a discordant clang echoed through the hall, shattering the silence. Blanc's head snapped up, alabaster brow furrowing in surprise. The heavy, iron-bound doors groaned open with a jarring screech, a sound that had not been heard within these walls for millennia. Her gaze, sharp as a honed blade, darted towards the intrusion. A lone figure stood framed in the doorway, backlit by the dying embers of the day. The figure took a deliberate step forward, casting a golden spark across the dusty floor. Blanc narrowed her silver eyes, the spectral light reflecting within them like molten metal. Intrigued rather than alarmed, she rose gracefully from her throne, the tome forgotten in her hand. Who dares disturb the slumber of this castle? Her voice echoed in the vast hall, a melodic whisper that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at the same time. The figure in the doorway took another measured step, the dying light revealing a tall man clad in immaculate white. His face, obscured by the encroaching darkness, held an air of quiet authority. He didn't speak, simply observed the primordial with an intensity that sent a tremor of something akin to curiosity through Blanc. Silence is not a virtue here, Blanc continued, her voice still laced with a cool curiosity. The intruder remained stoic, his presence a stark contrast to the decaying grandeur of the hall. Identify yourself, and explain your reason for trespassing on hallowed, if somewhat dusty, ground. A hint of a smile played on the man's lips, barely perceptible in the gloom. Hallowed ground, you say? His voice was a deep baritone, rich and resonant. Then where am I, primordial of white? Blanc's silver eyes widened a fraction. Recognition flickered within them, fleeting but undeniable. You know of my existence, she stated, a touch of surprise creeping into her voice. Few do in this desolate age. And even fewer would dare to enter this cursed place. The man stepped further into the hall, the moonlight now illuminating his features. He was undeniably handsome, with piercing blue eyes that seemed to hold a universe of experience within them. A strange symbol, a swirling vortex of light and shadow, adorned the back of his hand. Cursed, he echoed, his voice devoid of fear. And why would this place be cursed, Blanc? More importantly, where is, here? A tense silence descended upon the hall. The air crackled with unspoken questions and a spark of something more, a nascent awareness of a potential conflict. Blanc studied him intently, searching for answers to the questions he himself posed. This, she finally spoke, her voice regaining its characteristic coolness, is a world different from the above. A world that succumbed to darkness and destruction. And you, she continued, her words heavy with implication, are a most unexpected visitor. Blanc's voice trailed off as the figure across from her chuckled, a deep, rich sound that resonated in the cavernous chamber. Unexpected, indeed, he replied, amusement dancing in his cerulean eyes. Though, I wouldn't call myself a visitor. More like, an anomaly. The audacity of the statement sparked a flicker of annoyance in Blanc. Anomaly, she echoed, her voice laced with cool curiosity. Do enlighten me. The figure leaned forward, his posture suggesting an underlying intensity. My name, he began, his voice dropping to a low register, is Reinhard. He paused, letting the weight of the name hang in the air. And I believe, he continued, a hint of a challenge in his eyes, we have much to discuss, primordial of white. Blanc met his gaze head-on, her silver eyes searching for any hint of deception. This, Reinhard, possessed an undeniable charisma, yet something about him felt different. Foreign. Reinhard, she repeated slowly, testing the name. And what brings you to this desolate corner of existence? A hint of displeasure flickered across Reinhard's face, a stark contrast to his usual self-assured demeanor. It appears, he admitted with a sigh, my spatial transfer malfunctioned. There was a barrier placed on the cardinal world. One that snagged me during transit. Blanc raised an eyebrow, a flicker of something akin to amusement crossing her features. A barrier, you say? Interesting. Tell me, Reinhard, were you simply passing through, or did you have a specific destination in mind? Reinhard steepled his fingers, a contemplative look settling on his face. My original destination, he admitted, is now beyond reach, thanks to this unforeseen detour. However, he continued, his eyes gleaming with a newfound curiosity, this world of yours, it possesses a certain rawness, wouldn't you agree? A stark contrast to the sterile perfection of the cardinal world. Blanc remained silent, observing him intently. It was rare to encounter someone who wasn't immediately cowed by the desolate grandeur of the underworld. Perhaps, Reinhard mused, a hint of a smile playing on his lips, if this intrigue persists, I might consider taking up temporary residence. A change of scenery, so to speak. The audacity of the statement sent a jolt through Blanc. Taking up residence in the underworld. The very notion was preposterous. Yet, as she studied Reinhard, she couldn't help but be intrigued by the prospect. This unexpected visitor, with his enigmatic past and unwavering confidence, was unlike anyone she had encountered before. Temporary residence, she echoed, a hint of a challenge in her voice. An intriguing proposition, Reinhard. But tell me, are you prepared for the unpleasantries this world has to offer? A sardonic smile stretched across Reinhard's face. Unpleasantries, you say? He chuckled, the sound echoing eerily in the vast chamber. My dear Blanc, I assure you, the concept of unpleasantness is as alien to me as the concept of defeat. I have faced far worse in my travels, and emerged unscathed. His gaze held a steely glint, a quiet confidence that spoke volumes. Blanc couldn't help but be captivated by his unwavering conviction. This Reinhard, whoever he was, possessed a power that transcended the limitations of this world, a power that even she, the primordial of white, couldn't fully comprehend. An unexpected silence descended upon them, broken only by the crackling of the distant flames. Blanc found herself strangely drawn to this enigmatic visitor. Perhaps, just perhaps, his presence in this desolate realm could herald a new chapter, a disruption to the monotonous cycle of decay. With a slow, deliberate movement, Blanc extended her hand towards him, her silver eyes gleaming with an unreadable light. Then welcome, Reinhard, she said, her voice a soft purr, to the underworld. Let us see what unforeseen conclusion this unexpected arrival might bring. Reinhard hesitated for a beat, his eyes narrowed in thought. Then, with a ghost of a smile, he reached out and grasped her hand firmly. His grip was surprisingly strong, a testament to the power that lay beneath his seemingly nonchalant demeanor. Unforeseen conclusion, indeed, he replied, his voice a low rumble. This promises to be a most interesting sojourn. 7 comments 0 vote. Primordials gathering. Thank you for those who kept throwing stones. The air shimmered, distorting the already dim light of the chamber. Before Blanc or Reinhard could react, a colossal figure materialized in a burst of wind and crackling energy. A monstrous head, adorned with horns like jagged obsidian, filled the doorway. A booming voice, tinged with annoyance, echoed through the cavern. Oi, Reinhard, what's taking you so long? This place is a total drag. Blanc recoiled, her composure momentarily shattered. A true dragon, the pinnacle of existence, stood before her, complaining about boredom. Her gaze darted between the colossal intruder and Reinhard, who wore a look of weary exasperation. Veldora, Reinhard sighed, his voice laced with a hint of resignation. What are you doing here? The dragon, Veldora the storm dragon, puffed out his immense chest, causing a gust of wind that ruffled Reinhard's immaculate uniform. Well, he huffed, someone had to get my nephew out of this gloomy dump. Besides, I haven't had a decent brawl since my birth, and this place seems perfect for a little chaos. Blanc stared, dumbfounded. This colossal being, a creature of raw power that could shatter continents with a single breath, was apparently Reinhard's uncle. The implications were staggering. If this, Veldora, was merely a visitor, then what kind of power did Reinhard truly possess to command such a creature? Veldora, oblivious to Blanc's bewilderment, lowered his head, his golden eyes gleaming with predatory excitement. He scanned the cavern, his gaze landing on the obsidian table. Ooh, he rumbled, a mischievous glint in his eyes. Looks like we can have a little destruction party after all. Blanc's hand instinctively went to the hilt of her unseen weapon. This unexpected turn of events had thrown her carefully constructed plans into complete disarray. A single dragon, let alone one of Veldora's stature, could wreak havoc upon the already fragile balance of the underworld. Taking a deep breath, Blanc forced her voice into a semblance of calm. Reinhard, she began, her gaze locked on the legendary dragon, care to explain the presence of your companion? Reinhard pinched the bridge of his nose, a gesture that spoke volumes of his annoyance. Veldora, he said through gritted teeth, I specifically told you to wait outside. This is a delicate situation, and your enthusiasm is not exactly conducive to diplomacy. Veldora, for all his immense size and power, shrank under Reinhard's glare. His booming voice turned into a sheepish mumble. But Reinhard, I was bored. And this place smells like burnt toast. Reinhard sighed, a hint of amusement flickering in his eyes despite himself. He turned back to Blanc, a reassuring smile gracing his lips. Please forgive my overenthusiastic uncle, Blanc. He may be a force of nature, but I assure you, he's quite harmless, most of the time. Blanc raised an eyebrow, unconvinced. The very air crackled with barely contained power around Veldora, who fidgeted nervously under her scrutiny. This harmlessness was debatable at best. Most of the time, you say, she echoed, her voice laced with skepticism. Reinhard chuckled, a deep, rich sound that resonated in the cavern. Let's just say, Veldora possesses a certain enthusiasm for destruction. However, I can assure you, he wouldn't dare cause any trouble here. Not with me around, at least. He shot Veldora another pointed look, which effectively silenced the dragon. Veldora mumbled something under his breath about a ruined brawl, but otherwise remained subdued. The dynamic between the two was fascinating to Blanc. Here was a being of immense power, a true apex predator, cowed by a single look from his seemingly more human counterpart. It was a testament to the enigmatic power that Reinhard wielded, a power that went far beyond mere physical strength. Very well, Blanc conceded, her voice regaining its usual composure. However, I would appreciate it if you kept your enthusiasm in check, Veldora. The underworld is not a playground for bored dragons. Veldora grumbled in response, but a flicker of understanding finally seemed to register in his golden eyes. He mumbled something about respecting the lady of the house, and shuffled his enormous feet, clearly uncomfortable with the more restrained environment. Reinhard offered Blanc a wry smile. Thank you for your understanding, Blanc. I apologize for the disruption. Now, perhaps we can resume our conversation. I am quite curious to learn more about this world of yours. Blanc nodded curtly, her gaze still flickering between the two of them. This unexpected arrival of a legendary dragon had certainly added a new layer of complexity to the situation. One that she, the primordial of white, would have to navigate with utmost caution. Reinhard was now alone. He had a question that has been bugging his mind ever since he arrived at the underworld. One of his traits that is usually always active was nowhere to be seen. It is an experience for Reinhard, watching other creatures not running away immediately out of fear. Raphael, what is the situation? He asked, his most useful skill when it comes to things like this. Report. Master's aura of fear is currently being modified by me. I am sucking all of Master's aura and transporting all of them to your birthplace via unique skill. I believe that this is the most suitable way to proceed with the plan we have formulated, Master. Within time, the being you have wished to create will be born from the negative energy beaming from your aura. That calmed Reinhard down. As for the plan they are talking about, it involves Reinhard's influence in the future. Knowing this, Reinhard's concern was disintegrated. Blanc materialized in her private chamber, the stark contrast to the decaying grandeur of the main hall a welcome change. The room itself was a minimalist study, polished obsidian walls lined with glowing scrolls, a single, ethereal lamp casting a soft, white light. Silence reigned, a stark contrast to the chaos that had just unfolded. She sank onto a throne of pure white marble, her hand instinctively going to massage the bridge of her nose. The events of the past hour played back in her mind. Reinhard, a being of unknown origin and immense power, unexpectedly appearing in the underworld. And then Veldora, the legendary storm dragon, bursting in with his characteristic boisterousness, Reinhard's uncle, no less. It was enough to make even a primordial like Blanc feel overwhelmed. Thoughts swirled in her mind. Who was Reinhard, truly? What forces had brought him to this desolate realm? And Veldora's presence, it was a terrifying testament to Reinhard's power, and a potent reminder of the threats that lurked beyond the boundaries of the underworld. A part of her, the pragmatic primordial leader, knew she should inform the other demons. Their combined power was unmatched, and facing whatever Reinhard and Veldora represented would require a united front. But another part of her, the one steeped in centuries of solitary rule, balked at the idea. Consulting her peers felt like a concession, a sign of weakness. Her pride, a pillar of her existence for millennia, wouldn't be easily swayed. Blanc closed her red eyes, her breathing evening out as she entered a meditative state. This was a delicate situation, one that required careful consideration. Reinhard's arrival could be a threat, an unwelcome ripple in the stagnant pond of the underworld. Or, perhaps, it could be an opportunity, a chance for change, even an alliance against some unknown foe. For now, she would keep her counsel, observe, and gather information. Her intuition, honed by millennia of experience, whispered of a grander design at play. In the silence of her chamber, Blanc, the primordial of white, formulated a plan of action, one that would ensure the safety of her domain, and perhaps even rewrite the destiny of the underworld. Blanc's lips curled into a hint of a smile despite herself. Grand plan, might be a bit of an overstatement. In the grand scheme of things, her strategy was rather uncomplicated. Befriend the anomaly. The word, friend, felt strange on her tongue, a foreign concept in the cold calculus of the underworld. Yet, there was a glimmer of something in Reinhard's eyes, a spark of genuine curiosity that intrigued her. Perhaps, just perhaps, forging an alliance wouldn't be the worst course of action. She let out a long sigh, the weight of the day settling upon her. The butlers, efficient as always, would have already escorted Reinhard and his enthusiastic uncle to a suitable chamber. Tomorrow, she would initiate further conversation, probe deeper into their motivations and capabilities. With a final thought, Blanc willed herself to disappear from her throne, reappearing on a platform of shimmering white light at the center of her chamber. The exhaustion of the day finally hit her, a deep, welcome sensation. As she sank down onto the platform, the light pulsed softly, enveloping her in a warm cocoon of energy. The underworld remained shrouded in darkness, but within her private sanctum, Blanc, the primordial of white, drifted off to sleep. Dreams, vivid and fantastical, swirled in her mind. Dreams of alliances forged, of unexpected friendships blossoming in the desolate heart of the underworld. Dreams of a future yet unwritten. Unknown to Blanc, tremors of unease ran through the obsidian veins of the underworld, reaching the secluded palaces of the other primordials. The news of Reinhard and Veldora's arrival, though cloaked in secrecy by Blanc, had a way of worming its way through the shadows. In a palace blazing with an infernal golden light, John, the primordial of yellow, kicked her bare feet against the throne room wall, boredom etched across her beautiful face. News, any news, was a rare commodity in her desolate domain. So, when a flicker of curiosity, hot and unexpected, ignited within her, she knew something interesting was afoot. A shadowy figure, her loyal raven familiar, perched on her shoulder, rasped out the details of the newcomers. Reinhard, the raven croaked, its voice like dry leaves rustling in a storm, a being of unknown origin, accompanied by Veldora, a true dragon. John's golden eyes, usually glazed with apathy, snapped open, alight with predatory interest. A new face, and a legendary dragon at that. This was a development worth investigating. Finally, she grinned, revealing a row of sharpened canines, something to break the monotony. The raven squawked in surprise. John wasn't known for her patience, but this level of excitement was unprecedented. You're not worried about their intentions? The raven cawed cautiously. John scoffed. Worried? Why would I be worried? A good brawl is just what I need to shake off this rust. She shot to her feet, her golden armor glinting in the firelight. Tell Blanc, she commanded, a feral grin splitting her face, John's coming to call. It's time to give these newcomers a proper underworld welcome. In a palace sculpted from amethyst, bathed in an ethereal violet light, a giggle, light and tinkling, echoed through the cavernous halls. Violet, the primordial of violet, reclined on a throne of polished amethyst, her porcelain doll-like features twisted in a mischievous grin. Her short, purple hair, usually meticulously styled, were a mess of playful tangles, a testament to her recent amusement. A demon, grotesquely carved yet strangely endearing, perched on the armrest, its voice a gravelly rasp. New arrivals, princess, it rasped, its single stone eye reflecting the flickering violet light. A being called Reinhard, and, Veldora a true dragon. Violet's grin widened, revealing a set of surprisingly sharp teeth. News of this magnitude was rare indeed, and the prospect of new playthings sent a thrill down her spine. Veldora, a true dragon, a creature of immense power. Oh, the delightful chaos he could unleash. Reinhard, you say, she cooed, her voice laced with saccharine sweetness that belied her true nature. How intriguing. A new face to grace our humble domain. She flicked her wrist, and a collection of ornate torture instruments materialized from the shadows, each glinting with an ominous violet glow. The gargoyle shifted uneasily. While most feared Violet's immense power, it was her twisted sense of amusement that truly sent shivers down their spines. Torturing souls for her own sadistic pleasure was her favorite pastime, and the arrival of powerful beings like Veldora promised endless possibilities for entertainment. Perhaps, Violet continued, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper, we can offer them a little, welcome reception. One they won't soon forget. The gargoyle shuddered, its single eye flickering nervously. Blanc, the primordial of white, might not be thrilled with Violet's brand of hospitality, but that was a risk Violet was more than willing to take. After all, a little chaos was just what the underworld needed to break the monotony. A manic glint flickered in Violet's lavender eyes. Prepare the instruments, gargoyle, she purred, her voice dripping with childish glee. We have guests to entertain. Dot, 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 dot. Sunlight, albeit a filtered, ethereal version, streamed through the obsidian windows of the guest chamber, illuminating a scene both peculiar and oddly domestic. Blanc, the primordial of white, sat at the head of a long, black table, a single white rose adorning her plate. Across from her sat Reinhard, his golden uniform surprisingly unwrinkled despite the previous day's journey. Between them, Veldora the storm dragon, his colossal frame shrunk to a more manageable size, devoured a plate piled high with an assortment of roasted meats with gusto. The cavern echoed with the rhythmic crunch of bones and the contented rumble of Veldora's stomach. Amazing, he boomed, a spray of juice escaping his lips. This stuff is incredible. I haven't tasted food this good since, well, since ever really. Reinhard gave a side glance to Veldora as he spoke. Veldora, please mind your table manners. Veldora, for all his size, shrunk under his nephew's terrifying reprimand. Sorry, Reinhard, he mumbled, sheepishly shoving another piece of meat into his mouth. Blanc observed the interaction with a detached curiosity. Despite their immense power, there was a certain closeness to them, a dynamic that both fascinated and surprised her. Blanc raised an eyebrow as the door to the guest chamber creaked open without announcement. A slender figure, meticulously attired in a black butler's uniform, stood in the doorway. His expression, usually composed, held a flicker of concern. My apologies, milady, the demon's voice, crisp and refined, echoed in the cavernous chamber. There is unexpected news. Blanc set down her fork, her silver eyes meeting the demon's gaze. This man, though physically unassuming, was no mere servant. He was the Grand Duke, a title reserved only for the highest-ranking demon in her domain. His apprehension was a rare sight, indicating a matter of true urgency. Speak your report, she commanded, her voice calm but firm. The Grand Duke bowed his head slightly. It appears word of our guests has reached the ears of the other primordials. They are inquisitive. Several have been detected heading towards this location. Blanc's lips pursed. The arrival of Reinhard and Veldora was intended to be a private affair, a chance to assess their intentions before involving the other primordials. News traveling this fast was unpleasant. Each primordial wielded immense power, and their motivations were as varied as their personalities. This unexpected development could complicate matters considerably. She glanced at Reinhard and Veldora, their expressions now unreadable. Their breakfast was clearly over, their attention drawn to the unfolding situation. Prepare the guard for increased vigilance, Blanc instructed, her voice taking on a steely edge. And inform the other primordials that we will be extending a formal invitation to discuss matters at hand. The Grand Duke nodded curtly, understanding the gravity of the situation. The news of powerful newcomers combined with the arrival of the other primordials painted a picture of a tense and uncertain future. This breakfast meeting, it seemed, would now require a far more diplomatic approach. A loud, resounding crunch echoed through the chamber as Veldora finally scraped the last morsel of food from his plate. With a satisfied belch, he rose to his full, imposing height, his tanned skin and blonde hair gleaming in the pale light filtering through the obsidian windows. A wide, feral grin split his face. Well, that was a feast fit for a dragon. He boomed, his voice shaking the very foundation of the chamber. After a good meal, exercise is a must. It appears that my source is coming here, huh? This promises to be an interesting day. Reinhard lightly smiled, a hint of amusement flickering in his eyes. Don't destroy everything. That is my will. Veldora chuckled, a deep, rumbling sound. Just keeping myself sharp. Besides, a little chaos never hurt anyone, right? Blanc watched the exchange, a flicker of something akin to apprehension crossing her features. This unexpected arrival of the other primordials, coupled with Veldora's boisterous enthusiasm, threatened to turn a delicate situation into a full-blown maelstrom. The breakfast meeting, originally intended as a quiet introduction, was now poised to become a pivotal moment in the history of the underworld. 10 comments 0 vote. Primordial of Black. Blanc's carefully constructed composure faltered for a split second as the cavern walls shuddered violently. Dust rained down from the obsidian ceiling, and a low rumble echoed through the chamber, shaking the very table beneath their breakfast plates. Veldora, ever the showman, threw his head back and laughed, a sound that boomed like thunder. Looks lively out there, he bellowed, his golden eyes gleaming with amusement. Reinhard, however, shot Blanc a questioning glance. What was that? Before Blanc could answer, the tremors intensified, culminating in a deafening crack as a section of the obsidian wall near the chamber entrance exploded inwards. A torrent of dust and debris filled the air, momentarily obscuring the source of the destruction. Then, from the swirling cloud, emerged a whirlwind of blonde hair and golden energy. John, the primordial of yellow, stood amidst the wreckage of the wall, her short, bristling with chaotic energy. She wore a simple black skirt and a yellow leather jacket, the outfit a stark contrast to the formal attire of the others. A broad, savage grin split her face, revealing a set of sharpened canines. Well, she boomed, her voice dripping with sardonic amusement. Looks like the party's already started. Did someone forget to send out an invitation? The dust settled, revealing John in all her glory, standing amidst the wreckage of the wall. Her golden eyes, usually filled with a carefree apathy, now sparkled with a predatory gleam. Blanc rose to her feet, her silver eyes narrowed in a mixture of annoyance and grudging respect. John, she greeted coolly. An unorthodox entrance. John let out a hearty laugh. Just making sure no one dozes off during these OHSO important meetings, Blanc. She declared, gesturing towards the ruined wall with a cavalier wave of her hand. Besides, who needs doors when you have a grand entrance like this? Veldora roared with laughter, his amusement clearly contagious. Even Reinhard, despite his usual stoicism, cracked a faint smile at John's theatrics. Blanc, however, remained unfazed. This was John, after all, a being who thrived on chaos and reveled in a good fight. Welcome, John, Blanc stated, her voice firm. It seems the news travels faster than anticipated. John sauntered towards the table, completely ignoring the destruction she caused. News of a new face, especially one as powerful as that dragon over there, she said, jabbing a thumb towards Veldora, travels faster than a demon on a sugar rush. Veldora puffed out his chest, clearly enjoying the attention. Reinhard, on the other hand, simply shook his head in exasperation. So, John continued, her gaze now fixed on Blanc, what's the occasion? Are we finally going to have a proper brawl, or are we just going to stand around sipping tea and discussing existential dread? Blanc sighed, a hint of weariness creeping into her voice. It seemed a peaceful meeting with the other primordials was becoming increasingly unlikely. John's boisterous laughter was abruptly cut short as a high-pitched giggle echoed through the chamber. A streak of violet light shot through the newly created breach in the wall, slamming into the opposite obsidian wall with a sickening thud. Dust rained down once more, obscuring the source of the newest interruption. As the dust settled, a figure emerged, coughing dramatically and brushing debris off her purple pigtail. Violet, the primordial of Violet, stood precariously, her porcelain doll-like features twisted in a pout. Her long, flowing dress, the same vibrant violet as her hair, was now adorned with a layer of obsidian dust, and a smear of red marred her cheekbone. Oh, how frightfully uncouth, Blanc. She whined, her voice laced with mock hurt. Not inviting your dearest friends to such a delightful gathering. A little warning would have been nice, wouldn't you agree? Her gaze flitted across the chamber, landing on Veldora. Her pout instantly morphed into a mischievous grin. My, she cooed, her voice dripping with saccharine sweetness. A new plaything has arrived, it seems. How exciting. Veldora, who had been thoroughly enjoying John's antics, bristled at Violet's words. A vein throbbed on his forehead as he glared at the diminutive primordial. Plaything, he boomed, his voice echoing through the cavern. Don't you dare call me a plaything, you little. Before he could finish his tirade, a massive hand, encased in a golden gauntlet, shot out. Violet, for once lacking her usual agility, could only offer a squeak of surprise before the blow connected with a resounding smack across her face. The force of the slap sent her flying, tumbling through the air like a ragdoll before crashing against the rubble at the base of the broken wall. A stunned silence descended upon the chamber. John, for once, looked speechless, her mouth agape. Reinhard stared at Veldora, a flicker of amusement battling with disapproval in his eyes. Blanc, ever stoic, simply raised an eyebrow. Veldora, chest puffed out, bellowed a challenge. Anyone else want a piece of me? Now's your chance. The silence stretched, thick with tension. Then, a slow, deliberate clapping echoed through the chamber. A figure emerged from the debris, a single hand pressed against her bloody cheek. Violet, her face pale and eyes narrowed, was no longer the picture of childish whimsy. Well played, dragon, she said, her voice devoid of its usual childishness, replaced by a steely edge that sent shivers down John's spine. The playful glint in her lavender eyes had been replaced by a cold, predatory gleam. Perhaps you're not such a dull plaything after all. The air crackled with barely contained power, a clear warning. Blanc, realizing the precarious situation, cleared her throat, a barely concealed sneer twisting her lips as she surveyed Violet's pathetic state. Well, Violet, Blanc's voice dripped with icy sarcasm, it seems a proper introduction is in order, wouldn't you say? Given your current state of enthusiasm, perhaps you're finally interested in a real meeting. The tension in the chamber vibrated, a delicate balance between chaos and fragile order. Blanc, the ruler of this territory, had regained control, but the unexpected arrival of the primordials had irrevocably altered the course of the day. Violet glared at Blanc, the sting of the slap lingering on her cheek alongside a newfound respect for Veldora's raw power. She wasn't a fool. Charging in like a bull in a china shop wouldn't win her any favors, especially with Reinhard, the strategist, likely already formulating a plan to contain both her and Veldora if things went south. Swallowing her pride, Violet straightened her dress, the childish facade replaced by a begrudging acceptance. Fine, she conceded, her voice tight. A meeting it is. But this little encounter, she shot a venomous glare at Veldora, will not be forgotten. Veldora, still fuming but clearly enjoying the attention, simply chuckled, the sound echoing through the cavern. Bring it on, Pipsqueak, he rumbled. Blanc, ever the diplomat, ignored their bickering. Excellent, she said, her voice firm. Then let us proceed to the designated meeting room. We have much to discuss. John, who had been watching the exchange with amusement, chimed in. Finally, a proper meeting and maybe even a little brawl afterwards. Now that's what I call a productive day. Despite the chaos of the morning, a semblance of order returned. Blanc, with steely determination, led the way towards the designated meeting room. Veldora, still boasting, followed closely behind. Reinhard, ever the silent observer, trailed after them, his expression unreadable. John, practically bouncing with barely contained energy, brought up the rear. Violet, the former picture of childish whimsy, now walked with a measured pace, a predatory glint simmering in her lavender eyes. As they traversed the cavernous halls, the tension in the air crackled with unspoken threats and simmering power struggles. The heavy oak doors of the meeting room groaned open, revealing a starkly furnished chamber bathed in an ethereal, bluish light. A long, obsidian table dominated the center, flanked by imposing chairs carved from the same dark stone. Blanc gestured for the primordials to take their seats, her gaze lingering for a moment on Violet, whose bloody cheek still bore the mark of Veldora's temper. As everyone settled in, an uncomfortable silence descended upon the room. John, ever the embodiment of impatience, shattered it with a loud thump of her fist on the table. All right, she boomed, her golden eyes flashing with a hint of annoyance. Let's get this over with. What's the point of this meeting anyway? Can't we just introduce ourselves to these guests and be done with it? Blanc gritted her teeth, the informality of John's request grating on her nerves. It seemed John, lost in her usual desire for chaos, was the only one who didn't grasp the gravity of the situation. Taking a deep breath to maintain her composure, Blanc addressed the primordials, her voice firm and unwavering. The purpose of this meeting, she began, her gaze sweeping across the room, is to discuss the arrival of Veldora and Reinhard in our domain. Their presence here, while unexpected, has significant implications for the underworld. A flicker of curiosity crossed Reinhard's features, while Veldora simply leaned back in his chair, a bored expression on his face. Violet, however, remained impassive, her purple eyes fixed on Blanc. Blanc continued, her voice gaining intensity. These two newcomers are beings of immense power. Their actions, their decisions, can have a profound impact on our very existence. We must understand their intentions, their motivations, and ensure their presence does not disrupt the delicate balance of the underworld. She paused, letting her words sink in. This is not a mere formality, John, she concluded, her voice laced with a hint of steel. The fate of our domain rests on the outcome of this discussion. Just then, the sound of a flamboyant flourish cut through the air. The heavy oak doors swung open with a dramatic flourish, revealing a figure who seemed to have stepped out of a forgotten fairy tale. Standing in the doorway was a man, tall and slender, with a flamboyant air about him. His black hair was streaked with vibrant crimson and gold, mirroring the colors of chaos and royalty. His golden eyes, with red pupils and black sclerae, held a mischievous glint, and a wide, charming smile graced his face. He was dressed in a prince-like outfit, complete with a velvet cape and a cravat adorned with a sparkling ruby. This was Noir, the primordial of black. Well, he boomed, his voice surprisingly deep for his slender frame. What a delightful gathering we have here. Did someone forget to send out an invitation, or was this a private affair? Blanc, momentarily taken aback by Noir's flamboyant entrance, sighed. Noir, she said, a hint of exasperation in her voice. We were just about to begin. Ignoring Blanc's mild annoyance, Noir swept into the room, his cape billowing dramatically behind him. He stopped in front of the table, his gaze flitting across the assembled primordials. A playful grin spread across his face. Ah, introductions then, he declared, clapping his hands together. Excellent, I do love a good introduction. Allow me, I am Noir, the primordial of black, at your service. A collective groan rose from the other primordials. They were used to Noir's theatrics, but his whimsical nature often clashed with the seriousness of their meetings. Blanc, however, steeled herself. With Noir's arrival, the situation had become even more unpredictable, and she knew it would take all her diplomatic skills to navigate this gathering of powerful and capricious beings. Ignoring the reactions of the others, Noir swept into the room, his cloak billowing behind him like a storm cloud. He reached the table and took a seat with a flourish, his smile still wide. It was then, as his gaze swept across the chamber, that his eyes landed on Reinhard. A change flickered across Noir's face, the playful grin replaced by an expression of something akin to awe. He leaned forward, his golden eyes, usually filled with mischief, now held a curious intensity. The air around him crackled with a sudden, unexpected energy. Before anyone could react, Noir did something completely out of character. With a surprising display of reverence, he dropped to his knees in front of Reinhard. His prince-like attire cooled around him like a dark puddle on the obsidian floor. Everyone in the room stared, stunned into silence. Blanc's brow furrowed in confusion. John, ever the brawler, looked as if she were about to burst out laughing. Violet's eyes narrowed, unsure of what to make of this sudden display. Even Veldora, for once, seemed genuinely surprised. The object of Noir's sudden reverence, Reinhard, remained impassive. His gaze, usually sharp and assessing, glinted slightly in surprise. This unexpected display, from the most unpredictable of the primordials, had even the stoic tyrant momentarily off guard. "And you are?" Noir asked, his voice hushed with an unfamiliar respect. It was the most serious anyone had ever heard him speak. "Forgive me for my tardiness, but the grandeur of your presence momentarily escaped my notice. May I inquire as to your esteemed name?" The weight of Noir's question hung heavy in the air. The other primordials watched, bewildered, as their usually whimsical companion displayed such reverence for this newcomer. The question of who Reinhard was and why his arrival had such a profound effect on Noir remained unanswered. This unexpected development had shifted the focus of the meeting, and Blanc, for the moment, could only watch as the enigmatic primordial of black sought answers from the stoic overlord. Then, a flicker of something unexpected crossed Reinhard's face. The stoic lines softened, replaced by a hint of a genuine, albeit rare, smile. A low chuckle rumbled from his chest, sending shivers down the spines of some of the primordials. It was a sound that spoke of power held in check, of a storm waiting to unleash. "Intriguing," he finally said, his voice deep and resonant like the tolling of a distant bell. "The demon race is not so hopeless after all, at least one has managed to catch a glimpse of a fourth of my potential." The words struck Blanc and the others like a physical blow. Reinhard's power, even a fraction of it, was a force to be reckoned with. Yet, here he stood, acknowledging Noir's perception with a hint of approval. Noir, for his part, practically glowed with exhilaration. His eyes widened even further, the red pupils gleaming with an almost manic intensity. A wide, ecstatic grin stretched across his face, splitting his cheeks almost ear to ear. "A fourth," he exclaimed, his voice filled with an almost childlike wonder. "Oh, esteemed sir, you underestimate my keen eye. I dare say I have glimpsed a mere fraction of the potential that burns within you, a power that could reshape the very fabric of existence." He bowed deeply, his hands pressed flat against the obsidian floor. A privilege, truly, to be in the presence of such grandeur. The other primordials exchanged nervous glances. Never had they seen Noir behave in such a way. His usual theatrics seemed almost tame compared to this display of unbridled enthusiasm. John, unable to contain herself any longer, let out a snort of laughter that quickly died down under the combined glares of Blanc and Violet. Reinhard raised a hand, silencing the overenthusiastic primordial. "Your perception is interesting, Noir," he said, a hint of amusement flickering in his eyes. "Perhaps, at a later time, we can discuss this potential you speak of." Noir's eyes widened further, if that were possible. He practically vibrated with excitement. "A later time? You would grant me such an audience?" A hint of a genuine smile graced Reinhard's lips. The amusement in his eyes deepened. "Indeed," he said, "but for now, I believe we have more pressing matters at hand." He turned his gaze towards Blanc, his expression turning serious once more. "Your explanations, while somewhat disorganized," he said, "have been sufficient. The state of this realm is unfortunate, but not beyond redemption. Consider the existence of the underworld, tolerated, for now." A collective sigh of relief swept through the chamber. Even Veldora, who had remained largely indifferent throughout the meeting, seemed to perk up at Reinhard's pronouncement. However, Reinhard continued, his voice sharp with warning, "This tolerance comes with a condition. The demon race will remain under observation. Any further transgressions, any disruption of the balance, and your fate will be swiftly and decisively sealed." He glanced pointedly at Veldora, whose bored expression had morphed into a cocky grin. "The fate of this particular individual," he said, referring to the true dragon with a hint of disdain, "is left to your discretion. Deal with him as you see fit." The implication was clear. Veldora's freedom, or lack thereof, rested entirely on the shoulders of the other primordials. A spark of defiance flickered in the dragon's eyes, but he remained silent, a tense silence hanging in the air. With a final curt nod, Reinhard rose from his seat. A faint crackle of energy filled the chamber as he turned towards the doorway. "This gathering," he said, "is concluded." Without another word, he turned and strode out of the room, his powerful presence leaving a lingering echo in his wake. The heavy oak doors swung shut with a resounding thud, leaving the primordials to grapple with the aftermath of his visit. The meeting room remained silent for a moment, the tension thick enough to cut with a knife. Then, a single, booming laugh shattered the silence. Veldora, the ever-chaotic storm dragon, threw his head back and roared with delight. Freedom, he bellowed, the word echoing through the chamber. Finally, some entertainment. The other primordials exchanged wary glances. 10 comments 0 vote. Family reunion. A fierce crimson wind roared across the desolate landscape bordering the underworld, carrying with it the icy bite of Velzard's presence. Velzard, the ice dragon, her majestic form shimmering with an ethereal blue glow, hovered high above the swirling vortex that marked the entrance to the demon realm. Beside her, Velgrind, the scorched dragon, mirrored the swirling inferno within her, her crimson scales blazing with a heat that rivaled the sun. Both true dragons were a whirlwind of emotions. Their elder brother, Veldanava, had finally shed light on the existence of a previously unknown younger sibling. Relief, tinged with simmering rage, battled within them. Relief at finding a new sibling, and rage at Veldanava's secrecy. 5 minutes, Velzard rumbled, her voice echoing through the swirling vortex like the crackle of ancient glaciers. That's all it took to pinpoint their location. Velgrind snorted, a plume of fiery smoke billowing from her nostrils. Their auras practically scream, dragon, and danger. Child's play for us. Their combined senses, honed over millennia, had sliced through the underworld's chaotic energies, pinpointing their brother's location with ease. Now, a tempest of emotions swirled within them. Curiosity about the younger sibling, a hint of protectiveness, and a deep-seated grudge towards a powerful entity rumored to reside in this very realm. Velzard, ever the strategist, lowered herself closer to the vortex, her icy aura momentarily shielding her from the scorching wind. We approach with caution, sister, she warned. This realm is rife with unknown dangers, and our brother may not be as prepared as we are. Velgrind let out a growl, the sound echoing like thunder. Prepared. He's probably causing havoc and bringing shame to the true dragon name as we speak. Still, I suppose we can't let the little one be completely overwhelmed by everyone. Their telepathic link crackled with a single unspoken thought. The humiliation they endured 2 centuries ago at the hands of a celestial being rumored to reside in this very realm. Their nephew, the being who dared to slay them, a being they longed to confront once more. With a synchronized nod, the 2 true dragons plunged into the swirling vortex, their immense forms disappearing into the chaotic energy. The wind shrieked in protest as their celestial power clashed with the underworld's infernal essence, but the true dragons pushed forward, their determination to find their younger sibling unwavering. They emerged on the other side, a sight that would make lesser beings tremble. Velzard, an embodiment of winter's fury, and Velgrind, a living inferno, stood amidst the desolate plains of the underworld. Their powerful auras sent ripples of fear through the nearby denizens, who scrambled to hide in whatever crevasses they could find. Ignoring the terrified whispers in their wake, the true dragons set off towards the location Velgrind had pinpointed. Their senses, however, sent a jolt of surprise. The powerful presence they expected wasn't alone. Another familiar aura, one they hadn't considered, pulsed alongside it. Wait, Velzard said, her voice laced with a disbelief that echoed in Velgrind's mind. There's another strong presence. But it's not what we expected. Velgrind narrowed her eyes, focusing her senses. Recognition flickered within her fiery gaze. Wait a minute, that can't be. A wave of sudden clarity washed over them. The shock of their brother's existence had momentarily pushed another detail to the back of their minds. Reinhard, Velgrind muttered, her voice a low growl. We almost forgot, he wouldn't be alone. That other presence, it's our bastard of a nephew. The simmering rage towards their eldest brother, momentarily forgotten, a wave of exasperation washed over the true dragons. They had almost forgotten their nephew entirely in their haste to find the new brother. Their shared telepathic link crackled with amusement. A new challenge awaited them, one that promised a mix of annoyance and perhaps, a touch of amusement. Reuniting with their newly born brother and settling an old score with their nephew could all be accomplished in one fell swoop. The true dragons, their steps lighter with this unexpected turn of events, adjusted their course. They were heading not just for a new sibling, but for a chaotic family reunion that promised to shake the very foundations of the underworld. Within the obsidian walls of Blanc's castle, Reinhard, draped in an aura of quiet power, sat upon his throne crafted from molten gold. His eyes, usually sharp and focused, were scanning a series of intricate diagrams etched into the obsidian floor. A frown marred his otherwise stoic expression, hinting at a problem that required his full attention. Suddenly, a tremor of power rippled through the very fabric of the underworld, a disturbance so potent it couldn't be ignored. Reinhardt's eyes snapped open, a flicker of annoyance crossing his usually composed features. The air crackled with a tension that sent shivers down the spine of the lone primordial present, Noir. Those auras, Reinhardt finally spoke, his voice a low rumble. They're unmistakable. He recognized them instantly, the blazing inferno of Belgrand and the glacial chill of Belzard, his formidable aunts. A sigh escaped his lips, a sound heavy with exasperation. Their arrival, unexpected and unwelcome, promised nothing but chaos. With a swift movement, he rose from his golden throne. Power surged around him, coalescing into a shimmering barrier that enveloped the entire castle. The obsidian walls pulsed with a golden light, forming an impenetrable shield against the approaching storm. They come in force, Reinhardt stated, a hint of grim amusement in his voice. Prepare yourself, Noir. It seems your admiration will soon have a target. Noir, who had been practically vibrating with excitement ever since sensing the approaching auras, practically preened at Reinhardt's words. A target, you say? An opportunity to witness the true power of your majesty. Reinhardt's lips twitched in the faintest semblance of a smile. Perhaps. But remember, Noir, remain controlled. We do not wish for lifeless destruction, even if it entertains you. Noir bowed deeply, his theatrical flourish somewhat subdued by the seriousness of the situation. Of course, your majesty. Discretion is my middle name, well, not technically, but you get the idea. Meanwhile, outside the shielded castle, the desolate plains of the underworld trembled under the combined might of Belzard and Belgrand. Their arrival was a spectacle in itself. Belzard, a majestic embodiment of winter's fury, and Belgrand, a living inferno, their fury a tangible force. This barrier, Belzard rumbled, her voice echoing through the barren landscape. A curious trick, but nothing our combined power can't break. Belgrand, ever impatient, let out a fiery snort. Stand aside, Rioni. We come not for a fight, but for a reunion. However, their attempts to breach the barrier proved futile. It pulsed with an otherworldly power, repelling their attacks with ease. Their frustration grew, simmering alongside the memory of their previous encounter with their nephew. Within the protected castle, a different kind of chaos unfolded. Veldora, the embodiment of pure destruction, found himself locked in a playful, but ultimately destructive, battle with John, the Brawl Princess, Blanc, the ruler of the underworld, and Violet, the Nightmare Lord. The cavernous hall echoed with Veldora's booming laughter as he swatted away their attacks with playful swats of his tail. John, her fists crackling with energy, landed a few decent blows, but they did little to faze the mighty true dragon. Blanc, her voice firm, commanded Veldora to stop his rampage, but her words were lost in the din of battle. Violet, ever the cunning, observed the situation, formulating a plan in the shadows. Suddenly, the tremor from Reinhardt's barrier reached them. Veldora, sensing trouble, turned his head towards the castle walls. A spark of curiosity flickered in his crimson eyes. Hey, what's going on out there? He boomed, his voice filled with childish excitement. The three primordials, momentarily forgetting their predicament, also turned their attention to the barrier. Their faces, etched with worry and curiosity, mirrored the chaos about to unfold outside the castle walls. Dot, 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 dot. Just as the tension between the true dragons and the barrier reached a fever pitch, a tremor shook the very fabric of the underworld. The ground rumbled, and the air crackled with a power that forced Belzard and Belgrand to take a step back. A booming voice, laced with a hint of amusement, echoed across the desolate plains, cutting through Belzard's frustrated growl and Belgrand's fiery snarl. Now, ladies. There's no need for such a dramatic entrance. The barrier shimmered and dissolved, revealing Reinhardt standing before them. His golden hair, usually meticulously styled, was slightly ruffled from the dust of dispelling the barrier. A flicker of annoyance crossed his sharp features, but it was quickly replaced by a hint of amusement as he surveyed the scene. Veldora, he called out, his voice carrying through the open space. Enough with the childish games. We have much to discuss. The sound of Veldora's booming laughter abruptly ceased. A moment of silence followed, then a deep rumble echoed from within the castle walls. Reinhardt, you're here. That's awesome. Can we finally break some stuff now? Veldora's enthusiastic voice, laced with a hint of childish naivety, pierced through the tension. The true dragons exchanged bewildered glances. Their fearsome nephew, the slayer of true dragons, was seemingly having a conversation with their newly discovered brother. Reinhardt, the epitome of control, seemed unfazed. A hint of an annoyed smile played on his lips. Patience, Veldora. There will be time for destruction later. For now, let's welcome your sisters home. Belzard and Belgrand, still speechless, watched as the castle gates creaked open. A figure, shrouded in shadow, emerged, followed by John, Blanc, and Violet, their faces etched with a mixture of relief and apprehension. The figure stepped into the light, revealing a majestic true dragon, his scales shimmering with a vibrant sapphire hue. His golden eyes, filled with a childlike curiosity, locked with those of his sisters. "Hello," he boomed, his voice filled with an innocent exuberance. "I'm Veldora. It's nice to finally meet ya." The shock on the true dragon's faces was a sight to behold. Millennia of existence had prepared them for many things, but a playful, sapphire-scaled brother was not one of them. And so, amidst the desolate plains of the underworld, a reunion unlike any other unfolded. The two most powerful true dragons, known for their destructive might, stood speechless before their newfound brother, while their formidable nephew, the slayer of true dragons, watched with a hint of amusement in his piercing gold eyes. It was a scene that promised chaos, laughter, and perhaps, a touch of heartwarming family bonding, all under the watchful gaze of the primordials within the castle. Dot, 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 dot. The opulent halls of Blanc's castle buzzed with an unusual energy. Gone were the sounds of battle and the tremors of Veldora's rampage, replaced by the delicate clinking of porcelain and the hushed whispers of conversation. In the grand reception hall, an unlikely gathering had taken place, a family tea party, presided over by none other than Reinhard himself. Seated at the head of a meticulously crafted oak table, Reinhard exuded an air of quiet authority. His simple white suit contrasted with the ornate table setting, yet he seemed perfectly at ease amidst the grandeur. His golden hair, still slightly ruffled from earlier, framed his sharp features. A hint of curiosity flickered in his piercing golden eyes as he observed Veldora. Across from him, perched on a surprisingly comfortable chair, sat Veldora. His true dragon form, a whirlwind of emerald scales and primal power, had been tucked away for the moment. In his human form, he appeared as a young man with sun-kissed skin, tousled blonde hair, and eyes bright with curiosity. He was currently fiddling with a delicate teacup, a stark contrast to his usual boisterous demeanor. Flanking Veldora were Velzard and Velgrind, their true dragon forms similarly restrained. Velzard, the ice dragon, now appeared as a woman with flowing silver hair and eyes that shimmered like glacial ice. Her beauty was ethereal, like a frozen waterfall captured in human form. Velgrind, the scorched dragon, mirrored her sister's elegance in a way. Her fiery hair, usually a wild mane, was now tamed into a beautiful wave the color of the sea. Her eyes, the blue of a clear summer day, held a fiery intensity that spoke volumes of her power. Both, however, were still grappling with the revelation of a new sibling, their gazes flitting between Veldora and Reinhard. Beside Reinhard, diligently refilling teacups with an almost theatrical flourish, stood Noir. Assuming a slender young man with dark hair and golden eyes that gleamed with an unnatural red light. His loyalty to Reinhard was absolute, and fear was an emotion reserved solely for his master. He observed the scene with a hint of amusement, his dark uniform a stark contrast to the vibrant tapestries adorning the walls. The silence stretched, broken only by the nervous clinking of teaspoons. Veldora, unable to contain his curiosity any longer, leaned forward in his chair. "So, they're my sisters?" he asked, his voice filled with an innocent wonder that disarmed even the formidable Velzard. Reinhard met his gaze, a hint of amusement flickering in his golden eyes. "Indeed. It seems we have much to discuss." Velzard, ever the pragmatist, cleared her throat, her voice a low rumble. "Riony," she began, "while we appreciate the reunion, we would have liked to be involved in Veldora's care." A hint of unspoken challenge flickered in her glacial eyes. Velgrind snorted in agreement. "Exactly. We may not be known for our nurturing instincts, but surely we could have handled a little exuberance." She shot a playful but pointed look at Veldora, who blushed under her fiery gaze. Reinhard sighed internally. He knew his aunts wouldn't let this matter drop. However, before he could respond, Veldora spoke up again, his eyes sparkling with curiosity. "So, are you both strong too? You must be if you're my siblings." The question hung in the air, momentarily distracting the true dragons from their concern. Velzard and Velgrind exchanged a surprised glance. A ghost of a smile played on Reinhard's lips. "Strong," he echoed, his voice neutral. "Perhaps. But strength can take many forms. Tell us, Veldora, what do you consider to be strong?" Veldora, momentarily thrown off track, pondered the question, his brow furrowed in concentration. The tension in the room eased, replaced by a spark of genuine curiosity. Veldora puffed out his chest, a hint of pride replacing his earlier curiosity. "Strong," he boomed, his voice echoing in the opulent hall. "Strength is about pure power. Being able to blow things up, to fight and win. If you can't level a mountain with a single punch or freeze an entire ocean with a breath, then are you truly strong?" The air crackled with tension. Velzard's eyes turned an icy blue, her aura sending a wave of frost that shimmered across the teacups. Velgrind's hair seemed to smolder, her eyes flaring with a volcanic fire. The playful banter had evaporated, replaced by a simmering anger. Insolent brat, Velzard growled, her voice laced with millennia of icy fury. Do you dare question our strength? Exactly, roared Velgrind, her voice like molten rock. We are true dragons, harbingers of destruction. We have reshaped continents and scorched the very sky. You, a mere hatchling who can barely control his power, dare lecture us on strength. Veldora, oblivious to the brewing storm, blinked at his sisters, his youthful enthusiasm dampened by their sudden hostility. But, I thought siblings were supposed to be strong. He whined, a hint of confusion clouding his bright eyes. Reinhard saw the impending chaos unfold. A barely audible sigh escaped his lips. This was precisely why he had hesitated to involve Veldora's formidable sisters. He knew their volatile temperaments, and Veldora's innocent arrogance was the perfect spark to ignite their fury. Enough, he boomed, his voice cutting through the tension like a blade. His golden eyes, usually sharp and calculating, held a flicker of warning. Both Velzard and Velgrind, despite their immense power, flinched at their nephew's command. The respect, perhaps even fear, they held for Reinhard was deeply ingrained. Veldora, Reinhard continued, his voice calmer but firm, strength is not just about brute force. It encompasses wisdom, control, and the ability to use your power for your own greater good. Velzard and Velgrind scoffed, but remained silent under Reinhard's watchful gaze. They may not agree with his methods, but his authority, especially when dealing with their newfound brother, was undeniable. Veldora, however, remained unconvinced. He mumbled something about boring lectures and the thrill of a good fight. Reinhard, suppressing another sigh, decided to change tactics. Veldora, he said, a hint of amusement creeping into his voice, perhaps a demonstration is in order. Your sisters, despite their unorthodox way of showing affection, he shot a pointed look at the two fuming true dragons, are indeed formidable opponents. Why don't we have a little sparring session, just to showcase different aspects of strength? Veldora's eyes widened with excitement. A sparring session with his powerful sisters. Now that sounded like fun. He didn't understand the subtle tension in the room, or the way his sisters bristled at the suggestion. To him, it was all a game, a chance to test his newfound strength against his legendary siblings. Velzard and Velgrind exchanged a look. They saw the spark of challenge in Reinhard's eyes, a silent dare to showcase their power without resorting to outright destruction. With a grudging nod, they agreed. The opulent tea party had transformed into an unexpected battleground. As the three true dragons rose from their chairs, their human forms dissolving into their magnificent draconic avatars, a tremor shook the very foundation of the castle. The battle lines were drawn. Veldora, the enthusiastic but naive newcomer, against the seasoned might of Velzard and Velgrind. It was a clash of power, of ideologies, and perhaps, a fragile bond waiting to be forged in the heat of battle. 4 comments 0 vote. Veldora vs Velgrind and Velzard. Throw some stones SSS. Enjoy reading the long chapter. As the three true dragons surged to their feet, the air crackled with a raw, primal energy. Velzard's once human form dissolved, replaced by a magnificent creature of frosted scales and icy wings. Velgrind mirrored her sister, transforming into a magnificent eastern dragon, her scales shimmering a vibrant crimson, with long, flowing whiskers and a single horn protruding from her forehead. Veldora, his youthful face replaced by a ferocious draconic visage, roared with a joy that sent shivers down Noir's spine. Reinhard, ever the pragmatist, saw the potential for catastrophic collateral damage. With a flick of his wrist, a shimmering golden barrier materialized around the sparring ground. It pulsed with a faint magical light, isolating the battle within while simultaneously expanding the enclosed space 1,000-fold. From outside, the castle walls seemed to bulge slightly, momentarily defying physics before settling back into place. The newly formed true dragons paused in mid-attack, their primal rage momentarily tempered by confusion. The barrier emanated an aura of absolute power, leaving no doubt of its impregnability. Reinhard gestured towards the barrier, his voice calm amidst the tense silence. This will prevent any unnecessary damage to the castle, he explained, a hint of amusement flickering in his eyes. Consider it a training ground of sorts. Noir, who had remained silent throughout the escalating tension, finally found his voice. He materialized beside Reinhard, his dark uniform a stark contrast to the vibrant magic swirling around them. Forgive my rudeness, Lord Reinhard, he began, his voice a low rumble. But is this truly a test for Veldora? With all due respect, I cannot see him losing this fight, not against any single opponent, and certainly not against two. Reinhard met his gaze, a knowing glint in his golden eyes. Perhaps, he said, a faint smile tugging at the corners of his lips, the test is not just for Veldora. The booming laughter that erupted from within the barrier confirmed Reinhard's words. Velzard and Velgrind, initially angered by Veldora's naivete, found themselves caught off guard by his enthusiasm. Here they were, two of the most powerful beings in existence, preparing to spar with a hatchling who equated strength with brute force. But beneath the amusement, a spark of something else ignited within them. A competitive spirit, a desire to prove their worth, not just to their nephew, but perhaps to each other and to Reinhard himself. The battle commenced with a ferocious roar. Velzard unleashed a wave of icy breath that froze the ground within the barrier. Velgrind responded with a torrent of searing crimson flames, melting the ice with a hiss of evaporating steam. Veldora, caught in the middle, roared in delight, his emerald scales shimmering as he dodged and weaved through the maelstrom. From outside the barrier, Reinhard, Noir, and the remaining primordials watched the spectacle unfold. The clash of magic and raw power shook the very foundations of the castle, a testament to the immense strength of the combatants within. However, despite the sheer force of the true dragons, the barrier remained unyielding, a testament to Reinhard's absolute power. The battle raged on, a dazzling display of elemental fury contained within the golden sphere. It became clear that this sparring session, intended to be a controlled display of power, had escalated into a full-blown battle. Yet, the unbreakable barrier ensured the safety of the castle and those outside. The golden barrier pulsed with an otherworldly glow as the battle raged within. Velzard, the ice dragon, unleashed a blizzard that whipped through the expanded space, coating the ground in a layer of shimmering frost. Velgrind, the crimson dragon, countered with a torrent of fire that melted the ice, creating a swirling vortex of steam and heat. In the heart of this elemental chaos, Veldora, the youngest of the true dragons, weaved through the attacks with surprising agility. His emerald scales shimmered as he dodged a gout of flame, his eyes bright with a mixture of exhilaration and disappointment. An hour into the battle, a growing frustration gnawed at him. He had expected a challenge from his formidable sisters, a clash that would test his newfound strength. Instead, their attacks, while undeniably powerful, felt predictable, almost sluggish. He could anticipate the trajectory of Velzard's icy blasts and effortlessly slip past Velgrind's fiery breath. Finally, after narrowly dodging a particularly clumsy swipe from Velzard's claw, Veldora landed on a patch of scorched earth, his voice booming through the confined space. "Is this all you've got, sisters?" he roared, a hint of exasperation creeping into his tone. Reinhard's attacks were far more interesting. The question hung heavy in the air, a spark igniting in the volatile atmosphere. Velzard's icy demeanor cracked, replaced by a glacial fury. Velgrind's crimson scales pulsed with an angry heat. "Insolent whelp," Velzard snarled, her voice dripping with frost. "You had the nerve to ask that? You call dodging a few measly attacks impressive?" Velgrind roared, her voice like molten rock. "We haven't even begun to show you our true strength." Veldora stared at them, his youthful exuberance fading. He hadn't meant to insult them, but their predictable attacks left him yearning for a challenge that forced him to utilize his full potential. "Maybe not," he mumbled, his voice barely audible over the swirling vortex of fire and ice, "but I was expecting more." His words struck a nerve, a deep-seated insecurity buried within the hearts of the ancient dragons. They were the harbingers of destruction, the embodiments of raw power. Here, however, they were facing a hatchling, a newcomer who dismissed their attacks as mere child's play. A primal rage surged through their veins, fueled by both the challenge and the perceived disrespect. They wouldn't reveal their full power just yet, not to this arrogant upstart. But they would show him a glimpse, a taste of their true might. With a synchronized roar, Velzard and Velgrind launched a combined assault. Velzard wove her icy breath into a swirling vortex, its edges crackling with a malevolent energy. Velgrind channeled her flames into a concentrated beam, its heat so intense that the very air shimmered and distorted. The combined attack bore down on Veldora, an unstoppable force of unimaginable power. The ground beneath him froze, the air around him crackled with superheated energy. This was a display of the immense power the true dragons possessed, a force capable of leveling mountains and scorching the very sky. Veldora, however, didn't flinch. Gone was the disappointment, replaced by a spark of pure, unadulterated excitement. This was the challenge he craved, a test that pushed him beyond his perceived limits. With a ferocious roar that echoed through the confined space, he unleashed his own attack. A torrent of pure, radiant energy erupted from his sapphire scales, pushing back against the onslaught of ice and fire. It wasn't a precise attack, more of a raw outburst of power fueled by his newfound joy. Yet, the sheer force of it held back the combined might of his sisters. For a moment, the two forces clashed in a dazzling display of power. Then, slowly but surely, the tide began to turn. Veldora's raw energy, honed by countless battles under Reinhardt's tutelage, proved surprisingly effective against the more focused attacks of his sisters. The ice began to melt, the flames flickered and died. Velzard and Velgrund, their initial fury replaced by a growing sense of frustration, poured more power into their attack. The ground beneath Veldora turned to a sheet of glass, the air around him shimmered with an unbearable heat. His sapphire scales, though radiant, began to show signs of strain, glowing red-hot as they absorbed the onslaught. But Veldora held firm. This wasn't a test of endurance, not for him. He reveled in the pain, in the push and pull of raw power. He roared again, a sound that spoke of exhilaration rather than pain. The force of his roar pushed back against the combined breath attack, forcing it to recede. Within the barrier, a stalemate had been reached. The two elder true dragons, their expressions a mixture of anger and disbelief, watched as their younger brother, despite the obvious strain, continued to push back with a smile plastered across his face. Unknown to Veldora, his sisters were experiencing a turmoil of emotions. Here they were, two of the most powerful beings in existence, struggling to contain a hatchling. Frustration gnawed at them, a sense of inadequacy they hadn't felt in millennia. Yet, a part of them couldn't help but be impressed. This wasn't just raw power, not entirely. There was a skill, a control to Veldora's attacks, a product of his time with Reinhard. They wouldn't admit it aloud, but a grudging respect began to bloom amidst the frustration. As the stalemate continued, a new question arose. How long could they maintain this display of power? Even with their immense reserves, the constant exertion was draining. And more importantly, what would they achieve by continuing? A silent exchange passed between Velzard and Velgrund, their icy and fiery gazes locking for a brief moment. They both knew it was time to end this unconventional sparring session. With a synchronized snarl, they retracted their attacks, leaving Veldora panting but unbowed in the center of the scorched and frozen battlefield. Veldora, still buzzing from the exhilarating exchange, watched with wide eyes as Velzard and Velgrund transformed. Their auras blazed with an intensity that made the air crackle, a stark contrast to their previous display of power. A primal instinct, honed by countless battles under Reinhardt's tutelage, sent a wave of unease crashing over him. I had enough, you brat, Velzard boomed, her voice echoing with a power that resonated through the very fabric of the expanded space. Icy tendrils erupted from her, shimmering with an ethereal glow, defying the laws of physics as they twisted and contorted, reaching for Veldora with an unnatural focus. Velgrund, mirroring her sister's transformation, roared, "Behave properly, Veldora." Flames erupted from her, coalescing into a concentrated orb of white-hot fire. However, this wasn't the destructive inferno of before, it pulsed with a terrifying serenity, as if holding the power to incinerate with absolute precision. Veldora, his senses overwhelmed by the sheer power emanating from his sisters, felt a cold dread grip his heart. Unlike the attacks before, where he could anticipate their movements, these held a terrifying certainty. These weren't just enhanced versions of their previous attacks, these were infused with their ultimate skills, legendary stuff that rendered them absolute. He could feel the frigid tendrils of Velzard's attack reaching for him, their touch promising a soul-crushing oblivion. The orb of fire in Velgrund's grasp pulsed with an otherworldly heat, a promise of complete annihilation. Panic surged through him, drowning out his earlier exhilaration. He wasn't facing a challenge anymore, he was facing complete and utter destruction. Abandoning his aggressive stance, Veldora twisted and turned, a blur of sapphire scales. His inexperience as a true dragon screamed at him, urging him to fight back with all his might. However, the lessons learned from countless battles under Reinhard, the master of strategy, forced him to prioritize survival. This wasn't about pride or proving himself, this was about staying alive. The playful sparring session had become a desperate dance, a frantic fight for his very existence. He pushed his newfound powers to their limits, dodging with a precision that belied his age. But with every near miss, with every brush with their absolute attacks, the terror gnawed at him. Could he even survive this dance for long? The question hung heavy in the air, unanswered amidst the swirling vortex of ice and fire. Veldora twisted and weaved, a blur of sapphire scales against the onslaught of absolute power. Panic gnawed at him, but amidst the terror, a flicker of something else caught his eye. Through the swirling vortex of ice and fire, he glimpsed a flash of something cold, calculating, the emotionless expression of Reinhard watching from outside the barrier. That single glance ignited a spark in Veldora's mind. All the grueling training, the countless battles under Reinhardt's tutelage, flooded back into his consciousness. Lessons on strategy, on efficiency, on utilizing power with control and precision. He remembered Reinhardt's words. Strength is not just about brute force. It encompasses wisdom, control, and the ability to use your power for your own good. A grin ripped across Veldora's face, replacing the terror. He may be younger, less experienced than his formidable sisters, but he wasn't just some reckless hatchling. He was Veldora, student of the mightiest being in existence. He had the potential, the raw power that even surpassed his sisters. With a deep breath, Veldora delved into the very core of his being, accessing the wellspring of magicals that resided within him. It was a vast, untapped reservoir, even exceeding his own understanding. Among all true dragons, Veldora possessed the greatest reserves of magicals, a testament to his unique creation. The moment he tapped into that power, the very atmosphere crackled. The air thrummed with an energy that equals the combined might of Velzard and Velgrind's. Veldora's sapphire scales seemed to glow with an inner light, radiating a power that forced a surprised gasp from the watching primordials. From outside the barrier, even Reinhardt's expression flickered with a hint of surprise. He knew Veldora was powerful, but the sheer magnitude of magicals emanating from the young true dragon was staggering. Within the barrier, Velzard and Velgrind recoiled, their absolute attacks faltering under the unexpected pressure. The ice tendrils froze midair, the orb of fire dimmed in its intensity. Their faces, etched with absolute confidence moments ago, now held a flicker of dawning dread. Veldora, now radiating with power, straightened his posture, a mischievous glint in his eyes. Seems like we need to even the playing field, wouldn't you agree, sisters? His voice boomed with newfound confidence, echoing through the confined space. The tide had turned. The playful spar, that had escalated into a desperate fight for survival, now stood poised on a precipice. Veldora, the young, inexperienced true dragon, had tapped into his true potential, forcing his formidable sisters to confront a power they may not have anticipated. The battle was far from over, but the dynamic had shifted dramatically. The air crackled with a different kind of tension now. Veldora, no longer a frantic blur of scales, stood tall in his human form, a mischievous glint in his eyes. His sapphire scales, once radiating raw power, shimmered with a subdued glow as he channeled his magicals with newfound control. Velzard and Velgrind, their initial shock morphing into a simmering anger, glared at their younger brother. The tables had turned, and they didn't like it. Their absolute attacks, the embodiment of their ultimate power, had faltered against the sheer magnitude of Veldora's magicals. But underestimation was a luxury they couldn't afford. They knew Veldora was inexperienced, a hatchling still mastering his newfound power. This new confidence, this human form, spoke of a different kind of threat, a strategic approach honed under the tutelage of the mighty Reinhard. Velzard unleashed a torrent of icy shards, each shard imbued with the power of Lord of Patience, Gabriel. Their movement wasn't haphazard this time, but precise, aimed to exploit the vulnerabilities of Veldora's smaller human form. Velgrind mirrored her sister, launching a volley of condensed fireballs, each one a miniature inferno capable of melting steel. Veldora, however, had anticipated their response. Drawing upon the lessons learned countless times under Reinhard, he weaved through the onslaught with an almost nonchalant grace. His smaller stature, once a disadvantage, now became his advantage. He ducked and twisted, his movements fluid and precise, dodging the deadly projectiles with an uncanny ease. With a flourish, Veldora raised his hand, channeling his magicals. A shimmering barrier pulsed into existence around him, deflecting the remaining ice shards and fireballs. It wasn't the raw, brute force barrier he'd used before, but a focused shield, a testament to his growing control. Impressive, Velzard growled, a hint of grudging respect creeping into her voice. But how long can you keep this up, hatchling? Veldora grinned, a playful glint in his eyes. Long enough, sister, he retorted, his voice laced with amusement. Besides, the real fun begins now. With that, he launched into a series of hand-to-hand combat techniques, a deadly dance of precise movements and concentrated magicals. These weren't raw displays of power, but focused strikes honed to perfection. They were the techniques instilled in him by Reinhard, techniques designed to exploit weaknesses and bring down even the most formidable opponents. Velzard and Velgrind, used to overpowering their foes with sheer force, found themselves struggling. Veldora's attacks, though lacking the raw devastation of their own, were precise and relentless. They were forced on the defensive, their massive dragon forms a disadvantage in the close-quarters combat. The once confident expressions of the elder sisters were replaced by a mixture of frustration and surprise. They were facing a new Veldora, a strategic fighter who understood the value of control and precision. He was proving to be a more challenging opponent than they had anticipated. The battle raged on, a dazzling display of martial prowess and magical manipulation. Veldora, fueled by his newfound confidence and strategic thinking, held his own against his vastly more experienced sisters. The playful spar, intended to be a test of strength, had transformed into a showcase of skill and adaptation. The outcome remained uncertain. Could Veldora, with his newfound control in human form, exploit the weaknesses of his formidable sisters? Or would Velzard and Velgrind, forced to adapt to this unexpected style of combat, overpower their younger brother with their raw, destructive power? Only time would tell who would emerge victorious in this clash of strength, experience, and strategy. The golden barrier pulsed with a frantic energy as the clash within reached its peak. Veldora, a whirlwind of human agility, dodged a swipe from Velzard's claw by a hair's breadth. A concentrated blast of fire from Velgrind scorched the very air where his head had been moments ago. Frustration simmered on the faces of the elder dragons. This hatchling, this upstart, was proving to be a thorn in their side. Just as Velzard and Velgrind exchanged a glance, a silent communication passing between them, a chilling premonition washed over Veldora. His playful grin faltered. This wasn't just another attack. It felt different, ominous. The sisters raised their hands, their magicule swirling with an intensity that dwarfed anything they'd unleashed before. A gasp escaped the watching primordials. They recognized the telltale signs. Velzard and Velgrind were about to unleash their ultimate trump card, a combined attack fueled by their very essence, a technique so devastating it could reshape entire landscapes. But before the attack could coalesce, a chilling silence descended upon the space. The swirling magicules within the barrier faltered, like startled birds. A single word resonated through the confined space, a word that echoed with the weight of absolute authority. Enough. The word didn't boom, it didn't roar. It emanated from the very air itself, a whisper that carried the force of a hurricane. The barrier, once shimmering with chaotic energy, solidified into a perfect sphere of golden light, the very air resonating with a subliminal hum. Velzard and Velgrind, their forms halfway through their transformation, froze mid-stir. Their eyes widened in shock, their expressions a mixture of disbelief and a primal fear that resonated deep within their ancient souls. They had faced countless battles, defied countless gods, but nothing had ever instilled in them such a sense of absolute powerlessness. With a flick of his wrist, still unseen outside the barrier, Reinhard dissolved the golden sphere. The silence shattered as it dissipated, replaced by the gasps and murmurs of the recovered primordials. They had witnessed the unthinkable, the taming of true dragons with a single word. Veldora, panting slightly but otherwise unharmed, stared at the spot where the barrier had been. He felt a mixture of relief and awe. He had witnessed firsthand the true power of his mentor, the power that transcended brute force and raw magic, the power of absolute authority. Reinhard stepped into the now open space, his golden eyes scanning the scene. He met the gazes of his aunts, a hint of amusement playing on his lips. "Looks like someone overstepped their boundaries," he said, his voice mild yet carrying the weight of his immense power. "A friendly spar doesn't call for world-ending techniques, does it?" Velzard and Velgrind, their initial defiance replaced by a sheepish silence, bowed their heads in a gesture of submission. Even the proudest dragons knew when to yield in the face of overwhelming force. Reinhard's gaze shifted to Veldora, a hint of pride flickering in his eyes. "Not bad, for a hatchling," he said, a faint smile tugging at the corner of his lips. "You've learned well." Veldora puffed out his chest, a mischievous glint returning to his eyes. "Of course I have. Did you expect anything less from me?" The storm dragon. The assembled primordials watched in stunned silence as the master and student exchanged a playful banter. The display of unparalleled power, followed by the casual demeanor, cemented a single thought in their minds. The world had entered a new era, an era dominated by the enigmatic Reinhard. 3 comments 0 vote. Banquet. Throw some stonies. Ta ta. A beat of tense silence followed. Reinhard scanned the room, his gaze lingering on the primordials. They all shifted uncomfortably under his scrutiny. Finally, he spoke, his voice carrying a hint of finality. "This sparring session is over," he declared. "The rest of the day will be devoted to more, peaceful pursuits. Perhaps a strategy session, or even a simple feast. What say you, Noir?" Noir stepped forward, a hint of amusement in his dark eyes. "An excellent suggestion, Lord Reinhard. I believe a feast would be most welcome after such excitement." Reinhard nodded curtly. "Then a feast it shall be. See to the preparations, Noir. Let everyone unwind and enjoy the company." With that, Reinhard turned and began to walk away. Veldora, eager to bask in the afterglow of his performance, trotted alongside him. "Did you see that, Reinhard? I almost had them both on the ropes," he exclaimed, his voice filled with youthful exuberance. Reinhard chuckled softly. "You held your own admirably, Veldora. But remember, true strength lies not just in brute force, but in strategy and control. You have the potential to be a formidable opponent, but there is still much to learn. Veldora grinned. Don't worry, teacher, I'm a fast learner. Just wait until I've mastered all your techniques, then I'll be unstoppable. Reinhard shook his head slightly, a hint of a smile still playing on his lips. Perhaps, he said, but for now, let's enjoy the feast. I'm sure your sisters will have a few choice words for you later. Veldora's grin faltered slightly. The prospect of facing his sister's wrath was less appealing than he'd anticipated. But as he walked alongside Reinhard, the most powerful being he knew, a spark of confidence ignited within him. He was Veldora, the storm dragon. He had faced true dragons and emerged unscathed. The challenges to come, whatever they may be, would be met with the same unwavering spirit. The tension from the sparring session lingered in the air as the primordials shuffled towards the grand banquet hall. The once vibrant castle corridors now held an undercurrent of hushed whispers and nervous glances. Veldora, however, seemed oblivious, his chest puffed out with pride as he walked beside Reinhard. His youthful exuberance clashed starkly with the apprehensive mood of the others. The banquet hall itself was a marvel of opulence. Golden tapestries adorned the walls, depicting scenes of ancient battles and majestic dragons soaring through crystal-clear skies. A long, oak table dominated the center of the room, laden with an extravagant feast, roasted boar, glistening salmon, and exotic fruits piled high in shimmering platters. The primordials took their seats cautiously, their gazes flickering between the two true dragons and the enigmatic Reinhard at the head of the table. Reinhard, his golden eyes gleaming with an intensity that left no room for doubt, surveyed the assembled beings. A heavy silence descended upon the hall as he cleared his throat. I gather you're all familiar with the reason for this impromptu gathering, he began, his voice laced with a barely concealed annoyance. The arrival of my esteemed aunts, he said, the last word dripping with sarcasm, has been disruptive, to say the least. A collective gulp rippled through the primordials. No one dared to meet Reinhard's gaze. Velzard and Belgrind, still fuming from their earlier humiliation, sat stiffly at his right hand, their expressions stormy. Their exuberant display of power, Reinhard continued, his voice growing colder, was entirely unnecessary. This castle, after all, is a place of peace and diplomacy. Is that not correct? He directed the last question towards Noir, who stood impassively at his side. Indeed, Lord Reinhard, Noir rumbled, his voice devoid of emotion. A peaceful resolution is always preferable. Reinhard gave a curt nod. Then let us strive for peace, he declared, his gaze sweeping across the primordials. However, I will not tolerate such reckless displays of power within these walls again. Consider this a warning. A wave of relief washed over the primordials. They had feared a harsher reprimand, perhaps even another demonstration of Reinhard's terrifying power. The atmosphere in the room shifted slightly, the tension easing a fraction. Reinhard leaned back in his chair, a hint of weariness flickering across his features. Now then, he sighed, let us proceed with this feast. I trust Noir has ensured there's enough to satisfy everyone's appetites, even my ravenous aunts. A wry smile touched Veldora's lips. He glanced at Velzard and Belgrind, who scowled back at him. Despite the earlier conflict, a sense of normalcy seemed to be returning. Reinhard raised a goblet of ruby red wine. To a peaceful evening, he toasted, his voice laced with a hint of irony. The primordials echoed his toast hesitantly, the clinking of goblets a fragile counterpoint to the tense silence that had just passed. As the feast progressed, a semblance of camaraderie began to return. Veldora, ever the social butterfly, regaled the others with tales of his training under Reinhard, embellishing them for dramatic effect. The primordials, initially wary, found themselves drawn into his enthusiasm. Even Velzard and Belgrind, their initial anger replaced by a grudging respect for their nephew's skills, cracked a smile at some of his more outrageous claims. Reinhard, though still watchful, seemed to relax slightly. He engaged in quiet conversation with Noir, occasionally chuckling at some unheard remark. The evening, though born out of conflict, was slowly transforming into a gathering, a chance for the assembled beings to connect despite their differences. As the night deepened and the goblets emptied, a sense of acceptance settled over the banquet hall. Reinhard, having established his dominance, seemed content to allow a more relaxed atmosphere to prevail. The primordials, relieved to have avoided further conflict, reveled in the unexpected camaraderie. The arrival of Velzard and Belgrind, initially a cause for alarm, had inadvertently brought together a group of beings who rarely interacted. And while the evening had begun with a display of terrifying power, it was ending with a newfound sense of, well, if not exactly peace, then at least a grudging respect for the power dynamics at play. The night wore on, fueled by generous servings of exquisite wine and a shared sense of relief. The initial tension had thawed, replaced by a cautious camaraderie. Even Velzard and Velgrind, their earlier anger simmering beneath the surface, seemed to loosen up under the influence of the potent beverage. As the goblets emptied and refilled with alarming regularity, inhibitions began to fade. Velzard, her once icy demeanor replaced by a tipsy warmth, leaned across the table towards Veldora, her voice thick with slurred affection. You know, little brother, she rumbled, a playful glint in her eyes, for someone who almost destroyed the castle with your little tantrum, you put up a surprisingly good fight. Veldora, emboldened by his own share of wine and the unexpected praise, puffed out his chest with pride. Of course I did, dear sister. I am the storm dragon, after all. Velgrind, her crimson scales flushed with a rosy hue, mirrored her sister's actions, engulfing Veldora in a surprisingly strong hug. Don't listen to that old ice cube, Veldora, she hiccuped, getting rather chummy. You did wonderfully. You have the makings of a true dragon, with a bit more practice, of course. Veldora, momentarily stunned by the sudden display of affection, stammered out a response. Thanks, sister. The sight of the two true dragons, normally bastions of stoic power, reduced to giggling messes, sent ripples of amusement through the primordials. Even Reinhard, a hint of a smile playing on his lips, seemed to find the scene mildly entertaining. However, the alcohol also loosened Velzard and Velgrind's tongues in a less desirable way. As the night progressed, their playful teasing morphed into grumbling complaints. Honestly, Velzard slurred, glaring pointedly at Reinhard, the way he treats us. We're his aunts. A little respect wouldn't go amiss, would it? Velgrind chimed in, her voice laced with drunken indignation. Exactly. We almost leveled the place with our exuberant display, as he so eloquently put it, and all we get is a scolding. Where's the family spirit? The primordials exchanged nervous glances, unsure how to react to this sudden outburst. Veldora, however, remained blissfully unaware of the potential landmine his aunts were treading on. Don't worry, dear sisters, he chirped in, oblivious to the tension. Reinhard's just teasing. He secretly loves you both, really. This declaration only served to fuel the fire. Reinhard's smile vanished, replaced by a steely glint in his golden eyes. A bead of sweat trickled down Noir's brow as he subtly tensed beside his master. Sensing the shift in atmosphere, Velzard and Velgrind finally seemed to register the gravity of their situation. Their drunken stupor cleared slightly, replaced by a dawning sense of dread. They had crossed a line, and they both knew it. Well, Velzard stammered, her voice losing its earlier bravado, perhaps a little respect goes both ways, wouldn't you say, nephew? Velgrind, mirroring her sister's attempt at damage control, nudged Veldora with a sheepish grin. Right, family. That's what matters most, right, Veldora? Veldora, still blissfully unaware of the near disaster he'd caused, simply beamed back. Of course, sister. We're all family here. Reinhard, his gaze still fixed on his aunts, remained silent for a long moment. The tension in the room was thick enough to cut with a knife. Finally, with a sigh that seemed to carry the weight of the world, he spoke. Perhaps you're right, he said, his voice devoid of its earlier amusement. Family is important. Even, troublesome family. A hint of his earlier smile flickered across his lips, but it did not reach his eyes. Now then, he continued, his voice regaining its authoritative tone, I believe it's time for this gathering to come to an end. Enjoy the rest of your refreshments, but remember, excessive displays of power within these walls will not be tolerated. A.N. did not reach his eyes all right. No deep feelings here. With that final warning, Reinhard rose from his chair. The primordials, relieved that the night hadn't ended in another devastating display of power, scrambled to their feet. Velzard and Velgrind, their earlier drunken bravado replaced by a sheepish sobriety, bowed their heads in slumber. The following morning, a crisp pre-dawn chill hung in the air as Reinhard and Veldora prepared for their departure. The grand hall, once the site of a tense feast, now echoed with the sounds of hurried packing and farewells. The primordials, their previous hangovers replaced by a newfound respect for their powerful guest, milled about awkwardly. Veldora, ever the social butterfly, bounced from one primordial to the next, exchanging promises of future visits and playful banter. Velzard and Velgrind, their earlier drunken antics a distant memory, maintained a stoic silence, though a hint of apology flickered in their eyes as they addressed Reinhard. Reinhard himself remained an enigma. His usual calm demeanor held a hint of weariness, the aftereffect of a night spent managing volatile emotions. As he donned his travel cloak, a glimmer of gold caught Noir's eye, a subtle reminder of the immense power that lay dormant beneath the surface. Finally, the preparations were complete. With a curt nod to the assembled primordials, Reinhard turned towards Veldora. Are you ready, Veldora? He asked, his voice laced with a hint of amusement. Veldora puffed out his chest, a mischievous glint in his eyes. As ready as I'll ever be. Just point me in the direction of adventure. Reinhard smiled coldly. Adventure will find you soon enough, Veldora. In the meantime, focus on your training. Remember, true strength lies not just in raw power, but in control and strategy. Veldora grinned. Worry not, something like that is a piece of cake. With those final words, Reinhard raised a hand in farewell. The air shimmered, and a portal, a swirling vortex of golden light, materialized behind him. Veldora, his excitement barely contained, bounced on the balls of his feet. This is it then, he exclaimed. See you soon, everyone. The primordials offered a chorus of farewells, their voices tinged with a hint of awe and, perhaps, a touch of relief. As Veldora stepped through the portal, a mischievous grin plastered on his face. It closed with a snap, leaving only a faint ripple in the air. Reinhard lingered for a moment longer, his gaze sweeping across the assembled beings. His eyes met Noir's, a silent communication passing between them. Noir, he said, his voice low, there is a task I require of you in the near future. A discreet one, that requires your utmost attention. Intrigue flickered in Noir's dark eyes. Of course, Lord Reinhard. Reinhard leaned in closer, his voice dropping to a murmur. The conversation that followed remained a secret shared only between them. The weight of the undisclosed task settled upon Noir, but his unwavering loyalty ensured he would carry it out without question. With a final nod, Reinhard turned and vanished into another shimmering portal that had opened beside him. Noir watched the portal fade, the weight of his new responsibility settling upon him. The night's revelry may be over, but for Noir, a new mission had just begun. The golden portal shimmered and dissolved, revealing a breathtaking vista bathed in an emerald glow. Lush meadows, dotted with vibrant wildflowers in unimaginable hues, stretched as far as the eye could see. Majestic, ancient trees, their branches heavy with ripe fruit, reached towards a clear blue sky. Crystal clear rivers meandered through the landscape, their waters sparkling like scattered sapphires. This was the cardinal world, the heart of countless realities, teeming with life and magic. Veldora, his jaw slack with awe, swiveled in place, taking in the sights and sounds. Unlike anything he'd ever experienced, the air vibrated with a subtle energy, the very essence of creation. Beside him, Reinhard stood with his usual stoicism, a hint of something akin to familiarity flickering in his golden eyes. A melodic voice, powerful yet gentle, echoed across the meadow. Reinhard, Veldora, you've both returned. Veldora whirled around, searching for the source. His gaze landed on a figure emerging from a grove of trees. Tall and slender, with long, flowing black hair and eyes the color of a summer sky, the figure radiated an otherworldly aura. This was Veldanava, the true dragon god, their eldest brother, and the progenitor of their entire race. Despite the familial bond, a wave of nervousness washed over Veldora. He was the youngest, the playful prankster, and Veldanava, well, Veldanava commanded respect, even from his siblings. Veldanava reached them in a few graceful strides, a warm smile playing on his lips. He stopped before Reinhard, extending a hand. Reinhard, he greeted, his voice laced with affection. Reinhard grasped the hand in a firm handshake, his expression unchanged. Father, he replied coolly. Veldanava chuckled, a gentle sound that seemed to harmonize with the chirping of birds in the distance. Always so formal, son. But enough pleasantries. Where are Velzard and Velgrind? Did they not accompany you? Veldora, ever the impulsive one, blurted out before Reinhard could respond. They, had some business to attend to back home, brother. Reinhard's golden eyes flickered towards Veldora, a hint of exasperation momentarily breaking his stoicism. There were unforeseen circumstances, he interjected smoothly, rescuing Veldora from his predicament. Veldanava raised an eyebrow, amusement dancing in his sky-blue eyes. Circumstances, well, I'm sure you'll fill me in later. For now, he continued, turning his gaze to Veldora, a warmth settling in his voice, welcome home, little brother. It's good to have you both back in the cardinal world. Veldora puffed out his chest, a mischievous grin spreading across his face. Ready for an adventure, brother? Veldanava's smile widened, revealing a hint of something akin to pride. Always, he replied, his voice echoing across the vast meadow. Despite Reinhard's characteristic coldness, a faint flicker of warmth, a sense of unspoken understanding perhaps, flickered in his golden eyes for a brief moment. 7 comments 0 vote. Mediator. The vibrant wildflowers swayed gently in the breeze, casting dappled shadows on the lush green meadow. Here, amidst the idyllic scenery of the cardinal world, stood Veldanava, the true dragon, and Reinhard, his powerful son. A comfortable silence stretched between them, broken only by the chirping of unseen birds. Veldanava, his long black hair flowing freely in the wind, turned to Reinhard, a thoughtful expression gracing his features. Reinhard, he began, his voice a deep rumble that resonated with the power of creation itself. It's good to see you again. How have you fared since your last visit? Reinhard, ever the stoic figure, remained motionless, his golden eyes fixed on a distant point on the horizon. A barely perceptible pause followed before he spoke, his voice devoid of emotion. As expected, father, my duties require constant focus. Veldanava chuckled, a deep, rich sound. Duties, duties. I know, I know. However, you have been having fun yourself, right? You embody power and purpose, Reinhard. That's something to be celebrated. Reinhard finally turned his gaze towards Veldanava, a hint of something akin to respect flickering in his golden eyes. Such celebrations are unnecessary, father, he replied coolly. Veldanava's smile softened. He understood Reinhard's unwavering dedication. It was a quality he himself admired. He reached out, a hint of amusement playing on his lips. Speaking of duties, Veldanava said, I recently picked up on a faint echo in the south. A demonic presence, if I'm not mistaken. It's quite strong, barely a tremor, but it has piqued my curiosity. Reinhard's golden eyes narrowed slightly. A demonic presence. That is unusual for the cardinal world. Veldanava nodded. Indeed, it's faint, almost insignificant, but it's there. Nothing to worry about yet, but, he trailed off, leaving the unspoken words hanging heavy in the air. But you'd like me to investigate? Reinhard finished, his voice low and steady. Precisely, Veldanava confirmed, a hint of amusement returning to his eyes. With your keen senses, you'd be perfectly suited to locate the source. Just a quick investigation, nothing strenuous. Consider it a chance to explore the cardinal world beyond this meadow. Reinhard stood silent for a moment, considering the request. Very well, father, he finally said. I will investigate this presence. Veldanava's smile widened. Excellent, Reinhard. I knew I could count on you. Report back as soon as you have anything. In the meantime, enjoy the scenery. This world is your home as well. The once peaceful meadow now seemed infused with a subtle energy as Reinhard began to focus his senses. Veldanava, the creator, watched his son with a hint of pride. This faint demonic tremor might be insignificant, but with Reinhard on the case, even the smallest anomaly wouldn't go unnoticed. The cardinal world, a haven of life and magic, was in good hands. A flicker of golden light momentarily enveloped Reinhard, his stoic expression replaced by a flash of focused concentration. He closed his eyes, his powerful senses reaching out, weaving through the very fabric of the cardinal world. The faint demonic tremor Veldanava described pulsed weakly, a hint of concealment. The source, surprisingly, emanated from a place brimming with human energy. A hint of amusement tugged at the corner of Reinhard's lips. This weak presence, emanating from a seemingly ordinary corner of the world, was even more intriguing. The taint of a primordial demon, similar to the ones he encountered in the underworld, resonated faintly, yet undeniably. With a spark of curiosity, Reinhard deactivated his sensory extension. Golden light flared around him once more, then winked out of existence. He found himself standing on a dusty street, the clamor of human activity filling his ears. A line of merchants hawked their wares, children chased each other through the narrow alleyways, and the scent of cooking spices hung heavy in the warm air. This bustling human settlement, teeming with life and laughter, seemed an unlikely hiding place for a demon. Reinhard's golden eyes narrowed, his gaze sweeping the vibrant scene. A wave of raw terror had washed over the human settlement. Every human in the vicinity, from the burly blacksmith to the wide-eyed child, found themselves prostrate on the dusty ground. They trembled uncontrollably, overwhelmed by an incomprehensible presence. Their simple minds could not grasp the power that stood before them. They were ants scuttling at the feet of a titan. Reinhard opened his eyes, a frown creasing his brow. The scene before him was unsettling. He had intended a discreet investigation, not a mass display of paralyzing fear. A sigh escaped his lips, a whisper that nonetheless caused a nearby tree to tremble. Unnecessary, he muttered, his voice a low rumble. He raised a hand, his golden eyes sweeping the scene. A wave of calming energy emanated from him, washing over the humans. The trembling subsided, replaced by a dazed confusion. Slowly, the petrified figures began to stir, blinking owlishly at the world around them. A young girl, no older than 10, was the first to rise. She looked up at Reinhard, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and awe. He met her gaze, his expression softening slightly. There is no need for fear, he said, his voice surprisingly gentle for such a powerful being. I come in peace. His words seemed to have a magical effect. The humans slowly rose to their feet, dusting themselves off. A murmur of hushed whispers filled the air, a mix of bewilderment and awe. Reinhard looked upon them with detached interest. They were fragile creatures, these humans, so easily cowed by his presence. Ignoring the stares and hushed whispers, Reinhard began to walk through the marketplace, his powerful senses focused on the faint demonic taint that permeated the air. It was a subtle presence, easily masked amongst the vibrant hum of human life. But to Reinhard, it was like a beacon in the night. Here, amidst the dust and sweat of human activity, pulsed a faint demonic tremor. It was insignificant, a fly buzzing in a cathedral, yet the audacity of it piqued Reinhard's curiosity. He, a being of immense power, a reflection of his father, Veldanava, found himself intrigued by this minor anomaly. Standing in the center of the petrified crowd was a man with fiery red hair and eyes that mirrored burning embers. He wore the garb of a human, but the power radiating from him was unmistakably demonic, reminiscent of the primordials encountered in the underworld. Reinhard did not address the man directly. He didn't need to. Lesser beings instinctively recognized his presence. Here, in this mundane human market, Reinhard was a god amongst ants. Identify yourself, he boomed, his voice a rolling thunder that resonated through the very air. The humans trembled, their fear emerged again from the palpable entity. But Reinhard paid them no mind. They were inconsequential insects. The red-haired man, however, seemed unfazed. He slowly rose to his feet, a cocky grin spreading across his face. Well, he drawled, his voice laced with amusement. Look who decided to grace us with his presence. A being of such grandeur. The audacity of the primordial, to stand so casually before him, intrigued Reinhard. He radiated a wave of pure, unadulterated power, a silent command for the man to kneel. The red-haired man faltered for a moment, his grin faltering. Surprise flickered across his crimson eyes, replaced by a flicker of something akin to respect. He slowly raised his hand in a placating gesture. Hold your horses, big guy, the man chuckled, an edge of nervousness creeping into his voice. No need for such theatrics. I'm just Guy, taking a little stroll. You wouldn't happen to be the one who sent the shivers down everyone's spine, would you? Reinhard narrowed his eyes. The man, Guy, reeked of arrogance even in the face of his overwhelming power. Still, his power wasn't insignificant. Dealing with a primordial here, amidst the humans, was not ideal. How did you escape the underworld? Reinhard stated, his voice a low rumble. Explain yourself, or face the consequences. Guy raised his hands further, a hint of genuine concern crossing his features. Escape. Now, that's a bit dramatic, wouldn't you say? I was summoned by humans, so I was just adding a little spice to their lives. A bit of chaos never hurt anyone, right? Reinhard's expression remained impassive. This primordial was either incredibly naive or remarkably audacious. Either way, he was a nuisance that needed to be dealt with. Curiosity may have drawn me here, Reinhard admitted, a hint of coldness creeping into his voice. But your continued presence is a transgression. You have two options, Guy. Answer my questions, or be removed from this world. Guy's smile vanished, replaced by a snarl that twisted his features into a mask of rage. The amusement that had flickered in his eyes moments ago was extinguished, replaced by a burning ember of defiance. Removed from this world, he roared, his voice a primal scream that shattered the silence. Who do you think you are, giving orders like a petty tyrant? The power emanating from Guy surged, a crimson inferno swirling around him. The humans whimpered in terror, their bodies pressed even lower into the dust. Reinhard, however, remained unmoved. He regarded Guy with a detached interest, his golden eyes shimmering with a power that dwarfed the primordial's display. Do not mistake curiosity for weakness, Reinhard said, his voice a calm rumble amidst the echoing roar. I am the guardian of this world, a reflection of its creator. Here, my word is law. The audacity of the statement further stoked Guy's rage. Never, in his eons of existence, had he been treated with such arrogance. He was a primordial, a being of immense power, yet this construct, this embodiment of an overbearing god, spoke to him as if he were a disobedient child. With a guttural roar, Guy unleashed his fury. A wave of crimson energy erupted from him, aimed squarely at Reinhard. The marketplace shimmered, the very air crackling with demonic power. The humans, for a horrific moment, believed they were about to witness the world end. But the attack never reached its target. A wall of shimmering golden light materialized around Reinhard, effortlessly absorbing the crimson energy. It dissipated with a sigh, leaving the marketplace untouched. Reinhard remained unfazed, his gaze piercing through Guy's rage. Is this your answer, then? He boomed, his voice resonating with a power that shook the very foundations of the market. Violence. Guy's attack had been a test, a display of defiance more than anything. Now, staring at the effortlessly deployed shield, a flicker of doubt flickered in his crimson eyes. He was powerful, yes, but, this was something else entirely. The humans, witnessing the clash of power, dared to lift their heads a fraction. They saw the fiery red-haired man standing defiant, his attack nullified by the godlike figure before him. A crimson inferno erupted from Guy. It wasn't just an attack. It was a primal scream of defiance, a torrent of demonic energy aimed squarely at Reinhard. The marketplace shimmered, the heat distorting the air as Guy unleashed everything in his arsenal. Razor-sharp blades materialized from the crimson energy, hurtling towards Reinhard like a demonic whirlwind. Walls of fire rose from the ground, threatening to engulf the entire market. The very air crackled with chaotic energy, a desperate attempt to break through Reinhard's defenses. But the attacks never reached their target. The golden shield surrounding Reinhard pulsed with an ethereal light, effortlessly absorbing and nullifying each blow. The blades of demonic energy clanged harmlessly against the barrier, disintegrating into wisps of crimson smoke. The flames, once hungry and destructive, flickered and died upon contact with the golden aura. Reinhard stood impassive, watching the display with detached amusement. This was a gnat buzzing against a mountain, a child flinging pebbles at a fortress. He could have ended it all with a mere thought, extinguished Guy like a snuffed candle. But something held him back, a morbid curiosity. He wanted to see how far the primordial's pride would take him. How many futile attacks would Guy unleash before realizing the futility of his defiance? The humans, who had dared to peek at the battle, witnessed scenes ripped from their nightmares. Buildings crumbled under the strain of Guy's attacks, the ground itself cracked and groaned. Yet, the marketplace remained strangely untouched, a bubble of serenity held within the eye of the storm. Guy Crimson, fueled by rage and desperation, unleashed attack after attack. He conjured storms of razor-sharp hail, each hailstone imbued with demonic energy. The very space seemed to bend under the strain of his fury. But it was all in vain. The creatures crumpled to dust upon contact with the golden barrier. The hail rained harmlessly against the marketplace, leaving not a single scratch. The humans, now huddled together in abject terror, witnessed the terrifying display of power, their minds struggling to comprehend the battle before them. Yet, amidst the chaos, a single thought flickered within Guy Crimson's mind: doubt. He was a primordial, a being of immense power. He had never faced an opponent who could so effortlessly deflect his attacks. A seed of fear, a chilling sensation he hadn't felt in eons, began to take root. He was starting to see the truth: he was outmatched. Reinhard, his amusement morphing into a hint of disappointment, finally spoke. His voice boomed, a gentle rumble that somehow overpowered the roar of the battle. Is this the best you can offer, Guy? A display of brute force against an immovable wall. Guy's face contorted in a mask of fury and frustration. He had never been humiliated so utterly, his pride shattered like a cheap toy. But even in defeat, there remained a flicker of defiance in his crimson eyes. No, he snarled, his voice strained and hoarse. This isn't over. Reinhard raised an eyebrow, a hint of genuine curiosity flickering within his golden eyes. Isn't it? He rumbled. Tell me, Primordial, what do you hope to achieve with your defiance? This world is under my protection. You will not disrupt its peace. The once bustling human marketplace lay in ruins, a testament to the clash between a godlike being and a desperate primordial. Yet, amidst the destruction, an uneasy peace held. The humans, though traumatized, were alive. A tremor ran through the marketplace as Guy ripped a demonic maw open in the very air, spewing forth a torrent of writhing, obsidian shadows. They writhed and lashed towards Reinhard, seeking to engulf him in their inky embrace. But the golden shield merely shimmered, and the shadows dissipated into wisps of smoke upon contact. Frustration contorted Guy's face, a stark contrast to Reinhard's impassive expression. The primordial unleashed a torrent of attacks, each one more desperate than the last. He conjured a tempest of crimson lightning that arced across the sky, aiming to strike Reinhard down. He summoned an earthquake that shook the marketplace to its foundations, hoping to bury Reinhard beneath the rubble. Reinhard remained a pillar of serenity amidst the chaos. The golden barrier pulsed with each attack, effortlessly nullifying Guy's every attempt. The humans, huddled together beneath the tattered remnants of awnings, watched in stunned horror as their world transformed into a battlefield. Buildings crumbled, the very air crackled with demonic energy, and the ground groaned under the strain. Yet, the golden dome around Reinhard remained untouched, a haven of peace in the eye of the storm. Doubt not at Guy with each failed attack. This wasn't just a display of superior power, it was a mockery. Reinhard wasn't even breaking a sweat. This time, Reinhard raised a hand, a flicker of something akin to pity crossing his golden eyes. Enough, he boomed, his voice resonating with a power that seemed to shake the foundations of reality. The colossal entity froze mid-lunge, its demonic visage contorted in a silent scream. With a single thought from Reinhard, the creature dissolved into dust, leaving nothing but a faint echo of demonic power. Silence descended upon the shattered marketplace. The smoke from the ruined buildings hung heavy in the air, a grim reminder of Guy's rampage. The humans, their faces etched with terror, dared to peek at the scene before them. Guy stood alone, his fiery hair disheveled, his eyes filled with a mixture of despair and disbelief. The fight had drained him, both physically and emotionally. His bravado had evaporated, replaced by a cold realization he was outmatched. He sank to his knees, the weight of his defeat suddenly crushing. Raising his head, he looked at Reinhard, a flicker of defiance replaced by a hollow echo of defeat. It seems I underestimated you, Guy rasped, his voice hoarse. You are more than I bargained for. Reinhard regarded him with detached interest. And what do you propose we do now, Primordial? Guy's shoulders slumped. There is nothing left for me here, he muttered, his voice barely a whisper. This world is no place for me. A flicker of something that might have been regret passed through his eyes. Do what you must, he continued, his voice low and defeated. And this. There is no point in this humiliation. Reinhard's gaze remained impassive, but a hint of surprise flickered within his golden eyes. This was not the reaction he had expected. The Primordial, who had moments ago been a roaring inferno of defiance, now craved oblivion. The humans watched the exchange, their minds struggling to comprehend the scene before them. A godlike being and a defeated demon, their fates hanging in the balance. Reinhard pondered for a moment, a silent conversation taking place within the vastness of his being. Silence stretched between them, the only sound the crackling embers of the destroyed buildings. Reinhard scrutinized Guy with those piercing golden eyes, a silent judgment that sent shivers down the Primordial's spine. Finally, Reinhard spoke, his voice a rumbling echo. Death is easy, he intoned, but ultimately meaningless. You are a powerful being, Guy. Greater than power such as yours can be a force for destruction, or for something more. Intrigue flickered in Guy's eyes, a spark of hope battling the despair. Something more, he rasped. This world, Reinhard continued, his gaze sweeping over the devastated marketplace, is young, brimming with potential for good and for ill. The humans, though fragile, are capable of great things. However, they are prone to folly, to conflict. You, Guy Crimson, possess the unique perspective of both demon and, well, unwilling observer. A flicker of a sardonic smile touched Guy's lips. An understatement, wouldn't you say? Reinhard ignored the comment. I propose a challenge, he declared, his voice resonating with a strange authority. Instead of ending your existence, I offer you a chance to redeem yourself. You will become the mediator. Guy frowned, a furrow appearing on his brow. Mediator. Yes, Reinhard elaborated. You will act as a guardian, a force that ensures the balance of this world. You will keep the humans in check, prevent them from plunging themselves into oblivion. You will be a deterrent against their darker tendencies, without resorting to the chaos you seem so fond of. A strange mix of emotions flickered across Guy's face: surprise, skepticism, and a flicker of something Reese. 10 comments, 0 vote. Messy woman. Dash. A blinding flash erupted in the throne room, momentarily eclipsing the radiant glow emanating from Beldanova. Reinhard materialized opposite his father, his posture ramrod straight, embodying the very essence of nobility. A flicker of surprise, though, crossed his usually stoic features. Flanking Beldanova on his obsidian throne were his 2 younger sisters, Belzard and Velgrind. Their presence, especially Velgrind's, was unexpected. Father, Reinhard boomed, his voice echoing in the vast chamber. His words held the weight of pronouncements, a stark contrast to the casualness of everyday conversation. Beldanova, a majestic figure radiating warmth and power, boomed back with a hearty laugh. Reinhard, my son, back already? Report to me the state of affairs within the human world. Reinhard launched into his account, his voice measured and precise. He recounted the disruption caused by the primordial demon, Guy, detailing the initial confrontation, the display of power, and ultimately, Guy's surrender. However, Reinhard interjected, a hint of his judgmental tone creeping back in. Rather than eliminating the demon Lurtle, I perceived an opportunity. Thus, I have appointed him as the mediator, a fancy word for babysitter, to keep the humans from tearing each other apart. Silence descended upon the throne room after Reinhard's revelation. Beldanova stroked his beard, a thoughtful look on his face. But on the sisters' faces, contrasting emotions played out. Velzard, the ice dragon, her very presence a chill that settled on the air, narrowed her eyes. A demon babysitting humans? Seriously, Reinhard? Her voice dripped with disbelief and a touch of annoyance. Reinhard, you acknowledge some dusty old demon but not your own awesome aunt. Reinhard met his aunt's gaze with his usual stoicism. His power was significant, Aunt Velzard, he conceded. But it paled in comparison to mine or ours for that matter. He has potential, though. This role could be a good way to keep him occupied. Velgrind, the scorched dragon, spoke for the first time, her voice a crackling counterpoint to Velzard's chill. Intriguing, she rumbled, a hint of amusement flickering in her fiery eyes. A demon on a leash, forced to play nanny. Now that's an experiment I wouldn't mind observing. Veldanava remained silent for a moment longer, seemingly lost in contemplation. Finally, he spoke, his voice a comforting rumble that echoed through the chamber. Reinhard, he rumbled, your decision is unorthodox. However, I do trust your judgment. You witnessed the demon lord firsthand. You possess a unique perspective on his capabilities and intentions. Velzard fumed. This was ridiculous. Reinhard acknowledged some upstart demon over his own kin. She wouldn't stand for it. With a huff that sent a mini blizzard swirling around her, she stood up abruptly. Well, if you're so busy babysitting demons, Reinhard, she said, her voice laced with frosty irritation, I guess I'll just have to find some entertainment myself. Maybe pay this mediator a little visit and see what all the fuss is about. Before anyone could respond, Velzard stormed out of the throne room, leaving behind a trail of swirling ice crystals. Veldanava chuckled, a deep, rumbling sound. Looks like someone's jealous, he rumbled. Reinhard, a hint of amusement momentarily breaking his usual stoicism, smirked. Perhaps, father, he replied. Perhaps indeed. With a final exchange of glances, Reinhard vanished in a flash of golden light. Veldanava and Velgrind were left alone in the vast throne room. The fate of the human world, entrusted to an unorthodox mediator, hung in the balance. And Velzard, far from finished, had her own plans brewing in the tempestuous depths of her mind. A comfortable silence settled in the throne room after Velzard's icy exit. Veldanava chuckled once more, the sound echoing in the vast chamber. Always the fiery one, your sister, he rumbled. Velgrind, ever the counterpoint to her sister's frosty demeanor, chuckled as well. The sound was a crackling warmth, like a hearth fire on a crisp night. Indeed, brother, she agreed. But enough about grumpy Velzard. Did I tell you about the fascinating creature I encountered in the human world recently? Intrigued, Veldanava leaned forward slightly. A fascinating creature, you say? Do tell, Velgrind. Velgrind's eyes, molten gold like her scales, sparkled with excitement. He's a human, brother. But a most extraordinary one. A hero, they call him, Rudra. Strong, of course, but that's not the most captivating aspect. She leaned forward, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. He's incredibly handsome, father. Golden hair that shines like the sun, piercing blue eyes that hold the wisdom of ages, truly, a sight to behold. Veldanava chuckled again, a deep, rumbling sound. Is that so, Velgrind? A handsome human hero who has captured your fancy. Velgrind's cheeks, if a dragon could be said to have such things, flushed a faint crimson. Perhaps, she admitted, a playful glint in her eyes. He's quite powerful for a human, and surprisingly insightful. We've had some stimulating conversations. A hint of a smile touched Veldanava's lips. Stimulating conversations, eh. It seems the human world holds more intrigue than we first thought. Velgrind grinned, a fiery explosion of warmth. Indeed, brother, I highly recommend you pay a visit sometime. Rudra would be honored to meet the true dragon god, and I wouldn't mind some company on my travels with him. Veldanava stroked his beard thoughtfully. Travels, you say? Are you planning on accompanying this, Rudra, for long? Velgrind's eyes gleamed. There's much to see in the human world, brother. New cultures, emerging powers, and of course, Rudra's adventures. It promises to be quite an experience. Veldanava smiled fully this time. Very well, Velgrind. Enjoy your travels with your human companion. Just remember, the human world can be a dangerous place. Keep an eye on your hero. Velgrind bowed her head in a gesture of respect. Thank you, brother. I will. And who knows, perhaps one day I will introduce you to the magnificent Rudra yourself. With a final farewell, Velgrind spread her fiery wings and took flight, leaving the throne room bathed in the warm glow of her departing form. Veldanava watched her go, a hint of amusement lingering in his eyes. The fate of the human world hung in the balance, entrusted to a demon babysitter and a curious true dragon with a penchant for handsome heroes. It seemed even the affairs of mortals could hold a certain entertainment value. Reinhard appeared to a place he hasn't been for many centuries now. He left without a word millennia ago, but he believes that an immortal creature like her has no trouble with just a few centuries. Staring at the large mossy entrance gate of the labyrinth, Reinhard was displeased. It appears that after his disappearance, the woman has let nature take hold of things. Based on his understanding, she has probably lost interest in managing things because of the modern items he has given here. Now he is slightly regretting spoiling that woman too much. Still a troublesome woman, he clicked his tongue in annoyance. Taking a step, Reinhard marched through the gate without even bothering to open it. His body broke the gate with no resistance as he strolled inside. His presence was immediately greeted by the hundreds of spirits who thought that a new human had come to visit again. Look, a new presence. Right, a powerful and bright one at that. Is there a new visitor? This should help Lady Ramirez a bit. Oh, this presence is too good. Even surpassing that young boy from earlier. Earlier, you mean many months, right? But still, it is indeed a beautiful presence. The murmurs of the spirit were heard by Reinhard, making him uncomfortable. When he was here before, all the words that came out of their mouths shrieked with fear. It was strange hearing them compliment him, but nonetheless, he has no interest in entertaining him. Come out now or I'll break this whole labyrinth. His words were simple and easy to understand, but for the spirits who were familiar with it, they instantly froze in fear. They recognized that voice. It was from the monster that did nothing but spread fear in this labyrinth. Because of their traumas, no spirit was able to move for a while. Reinhard did not take that well, so he raised his hand and spoke. Very well, if that is what you desire, then I shall grant this pathetic labyrinth with its demise along with the creatures inside of it, he said, and was about to move when thousands of spirits revealed themselves in hurry. WWE apologize. Please don't kill us. Although many of them spoke at once, their purpose was only one. That is to appease the displeasure of Reinhard. Quote, Your life will be extended. Don't disappoint me again. Led me to your sloth of a queen, Reinhard said as the spirits moved in action. They immediately teleported Reinhard to his own room. Reinhard halted his steps as he stared at the spirits. His eyes were cold and threatened to erase them if they do not explain this joke. Please, we are not kidding. Lady Ramirez has decided to use your room ever since you left, Lord Reinhard. She refuses to leave despite our constant warning, a spirit hurriedly explained to avoid erasure. Also, please forgive Lady Ramirez if what you see inside might anger you. Another one added as all of them lowered their heads to plead. Reinhard didn't bother to listen as he swiftly opened the door. He couldn't help but twitch when he saw that the door was almost covered in rust. He wondered what this woman was doing all this time. Upon opening, the sight stunned and pissed Reinhard at the same time. His previous elegant and sophisticated room was no more. Now it is filled with a bunch of trash littered everywhere. There were various vegetable and fruit peels everywhere. Some stinky smell was also lingering around, showing just how much this room has been ignored. Staring at the only clean thing inside the room, the bed, Reinhard has to step back from shock to what he witnessed. There was Ramirez lying on his bed with heavy food seasoning covering her body. She was way too dirty for him to handle, so Reinhard immediately went out of the room. His footsteps though was enough to wake the lazy woman. Ha, haven't I told you guys not to disturb my rest? Is it morning already? She said, yawning as she stood up from her sleeping position. She instinctively reached out to the side so that she could grab the fries she had been eating before. She managed to grab one but was disappointed that it was already cold and limp. Slowly waking up, Ramirez took a glance inside the room and quickly stiffened when she saw a figure standing behind the door. She rubbed her eyes to check whether she was hallucinating again, a disease she has been battling. But even after tens of rubbing, the figure still wasn't washing away. She took a step towards it and was about to touch the figure when her hands were slapped away without mercy. Keep your filthy hands off me, woman. The voice in pain rang inside Ramirez's mind. She slowly looked up at the source of it without realizing that tears had begun filling her eyes. Reinhard, she muttered, wondering if she was still dreaming. Tisk, don't get close to me. You reek. I don't want your smell sticking to me. Reinhard conjured a stick and then pushed Ramirez's head with it, giving the two distance. Ramirez's heart plummeted. A single tear, fat and glistening, traced a path down her cheek, leaving a clean streak through the grime. Her voice, when she spoke, was barely a whisper. Reinhard, she croaked, her throat tight with a mixture of hurt and confusion. I missed you. She reached out again, this time hesitantly, her hand trembling slightly. Not to grab or touch, but to bridge the ever-widening gap between them. The yearning in her eyes was unmistakable, a child seeking comfort from a long-lost guardian. Reinhard, however, remained unmoved. The image of his pristine room, now a wreck of discarded snacks and forgotten entertainment, burned in his mind. The putrid odor that clung to Romulus was a physical manifestation of her neglect, a stark contrast to the pristine being he remembered. He loathed confrontation, especially with a creature as weak as Romulus. But the state of his domain, the very embodiment of her sloth, demanded some form of punishment. With a sigh that spoke volumes of his disappointment, Reinhard spoke. Romulus, his voice held a sliver of his usual authority, look at yourself. Look at what you've become. This is unbecoming of a queen. His words struck a raw nerve. Romulus flinched, the tear on her cheek finally falling, splashing a silent accusation on the dusty floor. A sob escaped her lips, a small, pathetic sound that echoed in the vast emptiness of the once elegant room. She stammered, her voice thick with unshed tears. I got bored. You were gone for so long, and the spirits, they weren't the same without you scaring them. The last statement, a pitiful attempt at humor, hung heavy in the air. Reinhard remained impassive, but a flicker of something akin to pity danced in his eyes for a brief moment. Clean yourself up, Romulus, he finally relented, the harshness in his voice softened by a hair's breadth. And then we will talk about what comes next. He turned to leave, his golden light casting long shadows across the room. Romulus, a solitary figure amidst the chaos, watched him go. A single, choked sob escaped her lips, a heartbreaking counterpoint to the sterile silence of the labyrinth. Tears streamed down Romulus's face as Reinhard's retreating form vanished from sight. The weight of his disappointment, a crushing force heavier than any spell, pressed down on her. With a shaky breath, she wiped her tears with the back of her hand, a smear of grime mixing with the salty water. Shame burned in her gut, a prickling sensation that spurred her into action. She couldn't stay like this. Not in front of Reinhard. Mustering what little dignity remained, Romulus shuffled towards the bathroom, her steps heavy with despair. The once grand room, now a cluttered mess, seemed to mock her with every glance. It was a reflection of her own neglected state, a testament to the loneliness that had consumed her in Reinhard's absence. Hours ticked by, marked by the sounds of scrubbing and splashing water. When Romulus finally emerged, she was a far cry from the bedraggled creature Reinhard had encountered. The grime was gone, replaced by a faint shimmer that spoke of her renewed spirit energy. Though her clothes, once pristine, still held the faint echoes of forgotten meals, she held her head a little higher, a spark of defiance replacing the tearful despair. Reinhard awaited her in the center of the room, his posture as rigid as ever. The air crackled with unspoken tension. Romulus took a hesitant step forward, then another, until she stood before him. I apologize, she said, her voice small but clear. I shouldn't have let myself go like that. Reinhard inclined his head in a curt nod, a gesture devoid of warmth. See that you don't, he replied, his voice leaving no room for argument. Silence descended once more, heavy and suffocating. Romulus, however, couldn't bear it. The dam of her emotions, held back for centuries, finally burst. But Reinhard, she cried, her voice laced with hurt. Where were you? Why did you disappear for so long? Didn't you even miss me a little? Reinhard's expression remained stoic, but a flicker of something akin to surprise passed through his eyes. He opened his mouth to speak, but Romulus cut him off. And don't even get me started on letters. She continued, her voice rising in pitch. You could have at least sent a single message. A carrier pigeon, a magical projection, anything. Did you just forget about me entirely? Reinhard rolled his eyes, an action that seemed to carry the weight of ages. There was much to do, he said simply. Much to do, Romulus sputtered, her outrage momentarily eclipsing her sadness. And what about my labyrinth? This room. If you were here, none of this would have happened. She gestured wildly at the remnants of her snacking sprees, the evidence of her boredom laid bare. A flicker of emotion flickered across Reinhard's face, a barely perceptible tremor in his otherwise emotionless mask. Seeing this, Romulus's anger subsided, replaced by a wave of dejection. She slumped her shoulders, a defeated sigh escaping her lips. Reinhard, after a long, contemplative moment, did something entirely unexpected. He extended an arm, stiffly patting the head of Romulus. Romulus's eyes widened in surprise. It wasn't an embrace, not by a long shot, but it was the closest thing to comfort he had offered all night. Hesitantly, she reached out and wiped the last vestiges of tears from her face with the edge of the fabric. I will explain things later, Reinhard said, his voice gruff but not unkind. For now, let us get this mess cleaned up. Romulus, a flicker of hope rekindled in her chest, nodded silently. Together, the unlikely pair began the arduous task of restoring the room to its former glory. It would be a long process, a testament to the time lost and the bridges that needed rebuilding. I'll start explaining. The revelation hung heavy in the air, a weighty silence settling between them. Finally, Reinhardt spoke, his voice firm and laced with the passage of ages. Millennia ago, he began, his gaze fixed on some unseen point in the distance. Veldora, a newborn true dragon, emerged into the world. His immense power was raw and untamed, a swirling vortex of chaos that threatened to create catastrophe. Ramirez blinked, surprise flickering across her features. The playful image of a mischievous hatchling she'd conjured up earlier shattered, replaced by a sense of awe and a hint of trepidation. So, she began, her voice barely a whisper, you were raising a true dragon. A flicker of amusement, a rare sight on Reinhardt's stoic face, crossed his features. Not quite raising, he corrected, a hint of a wry smile playing on his lips. More like, guiding a tempest. Veldora, in his infancy, possessed a power that dwarfed even the mightiest of beings. It was intriguing, to say the least. Ramirez leaned forward, captivated. The amusement she'd felt earlier returned, tinged with a newfound curiosity. Intriguing. A true dragon with the power to level mountains was intriguing. Reinhardt chuckled, a deep rumble that echoed in the room. His potential for destruction was undeniable, he admitted. But there was also a spark within him, a curiosity about the world that burned just as brightly as his raw power. It was that spark that drew me in. A warmth bloomed in Ramirez's chest. The stern, emotionless guardian she remembered was being replaced by a man who had witnessed the potential for wonder within a newborn dragon. So, where is Veldora now? She asked, her voice filled with genuine interest. Is he still a whirlwind of chaos, or has your guidance paid off? Reinhardt's expression lightened slightly. Veldora now roams the world, he said, a hint of pride in his voice. He has learned to control his power, to channel his chaotic nature into something productive. He is no longer a threat, but a force for good, a protector in his own right. Ramirez's eyes widened. A newborn true dragon, roaming free. Can I meet him someday? She blurted out, the question bubbling up before she could stop it. Reinhardt raised an eyebrow, a hint of amusement flickering in his eyes. Perhaps, he said thoughtfully. Veldora is a being of immense power, but also of immense curiosity. I'm sure he would be interested in meeting the enigmatic Queen of Spirits. Ramirez beamed, a spark of excitement replacing the earlier awe. The prospect of meeting a free true dragon was simply too thrilling to resist. I can handle myself, she declared, puffing out her chest in mock bravado. Reinhardt chuckled once more, his voice was ominous, the sound echoing in the silent room. We shall discuss it further at a later time, he said, turning his gaze towards the neglected state of the labyrinth. For now, there is the matter of this residence. Ramirez winced, suddenly self-conscious under his pointed stare. Right, she mumbled, looking down at her dusty clothes. Cleaning. We should probably get started on cleaning. Reinhardt nodded in agreement. Together, the unlikely pair set to work, the once proud guardian and the queen who had let her domain fall into disrepair. It was a slow, tedious process, but with each scrubbed surface and discarded snack wrapper, a sense of renewal filled the air. As they worked, Ramirez stole a glance at Reinhardt. His expression remained mostly stoic, but there was a hint of something in his eyes. Perhaps a flicker of understanding, or maybe even a touch of amusement. Whatever it was, it filled Ramirez with a quiet hope. The labyrinth, neglected for millennia, was slowly being restored. And perhaps, in the process, a bond that had been strained by time and circumstance was beginning to heal. This change of attitude from Reinhardt is because some pointed out that the Reinhardt from Earth and original Reinhardt should have merged instead of just the original taking over. 9 comments 0 vote. Ultimate skill analysis. A few years have passed since the reunion between Reinhardt and Ramirez. The two spent their years arguing with each other as they had nothing to do anyway. Ramirez is currently sleeping in her own room, while Reinhardt is sitting on his throne thinking about something. He asked his ultimate skill Raphael about the progress she has made. Report. Analysis of the following skills. Unique skill Pride. Ultimate skill Lord of Charity, Ragal. Ultimate skill Lord of Patience, Gabriel. Ultimate skill Lord of Justice, Michael. Ultimate skill Lord of Purity, Metatron. Ultimate skill Lord of Hope, Sariel. Has been completed. Creation of these skills will consume 70% of Master's energy. Reinhardt raised his eyebrow hearing that. Are Michael, Sariel, and Metatron the only skills you can analyze from Father? He appears to have more than this right. How about Sandalphon, or Melchizedek? He asked, wondering about those. Negative. With my current calculating speed, I can roughly analyze all of Lord Veldanava's skills within another 3 millennia. Permission to proceed, Master. Just then, Reinhardt realized that Raphael was far different from Seal. Her calculating speed falls short compared to that disgraceful Mana's. Although Reinhardt is tempted to evolve Raphael, He has no interest in having a whole different ego floating around his head. He would rather wait than to have something like that. He believes that only he should be at the top and having another ego would be a rule breaker. It consumes 70%. How much would I have left? He asked. Report. Master's current existential points have reached the number of 530 million. Subtracting 70% among those, Master will be left with 159 million EP. So still greater compared to the combination of Belzard and Belgrand, this should be enough, Reinhard thought as he fell deep into his thoughts. There's no other way for this, is there? Reinhard finally said. Affirmative. Given the parameters and the current objectives, this course of action is the most optimal, Raphael responded, her tone devoid of any hesitation. Reinhard sighed, leaning back on his throne. Very well, proceed as planned, he ordered, resigning himself to the necessity of the situation. Acknowledged. Commencing energy extraction and skill creation, Raphael stated, beginning the process without delay. Immediately, Reinhard felt a powerful surge as his energy was siphoned off. The room was filled with a shimmering aura, radiating from Reinhard as his immense energy was harnessed. The sensation was overwhelming, his body tingling with the intensity of the transfer. This sudden fluctuation in energy did not go unnoticed. Across the world, various powerful beings sensed the disturbance, their attentions drawn to the source of this immense power. Among them, the one most alarmed was Ramirez. Despite being in a deep sleep, the Queen of Spirits was highly attuned to such changes. Ramirez stirred, her senses on high alert as she quickly awoke. Recognizing the source of the energy drain, she leapt from her bed, her small form darting towards Reinhard's room with remarkable speed. Without hesitation, she barged through the doors, her eyes wide with concern. Reinhard, what are you doing? Ramirez exclaimed, her voice filled with both worry and anger as she took in the sight of her friend engulfed in a brilliant light. Reinhard coldly observed his body, noting the sensations and changes as the energy was siphoned. He wondered what would happen to it when such a significant portion of his power was drained. The process was fascinating in a detached way, almost like an experiment. Ramirez, on the other hand, was frantic. She started calling upon a multitude of spirits, her desperation evident. Come on, help me, she shouted, summoning various elemental spirits that swirled around her, but none seemed to be able to counteract the intense energy flow from Reinhard. In a final attempt, Ramirez focused her energy and summoned a superior spirit of light. Please, help him, she implored, directing the spirit towards Reinhard. The superior spirit of light merged with him, infusing his body with a new, radiant power. In that moment, a hero's egg was forced into existence within Reinhard, adding an unexpected layer to the ongoing transformation. The siphoning of energy finally ended, and the brilliant aura around Reinhard began to fade. He stopped his observation, noting the subtle yet profound changes within his body. Glancing at Ramirez, his expression was a deadpan look that clearly conveyed, "Why did you do such an unnecessary thing?" Ramirez, still flushed with concern and effort, caught his look and bristled slightly. "I was just trying to help. You should be happy I was concerned about you," she retorted, her voice a mix of defensiveness and lingering worry. "Do you even realize how dangerous that looked? You can't just." Reinhard raised a hand, silencing her mid-sentence. "Ramirez, your concern is noted. But unnecessary," he stated calmly, though his tone carried a hint of annoyance. Ramirez huffed, crossing her arms. "Well, excuse me for caring. Next time I'll just let you drain yourself dry without lifting a finger," she muttered, though there was no real malice in her words. She was still visibly shaken by the whole ordeal, and her eyes searched Reinhard's face for any signs of distress. Reinhard sighed inwardly. "I appreciate your concern, Ramirez. But this was something I needed to do." Although tired of Ramirez's antics, Reinhard decided to show his appreciation in a way she would understand. With a slight wave of his hand, he summoned a small, round pastry and handed it to her. "Here, a token of thanks for your concern." Ramirez took the donut, her eyes widening in delight at the sight of the unfamiliar treat. "What is this?" she asked, her voice filled with curiosity and excitement. "It's called a donut," Reinhard replied, watching her reaction. Ramirez sniffed the donut, the delicious smell causing her to break into a wide grin. "It smells amazing." Without further hesitation, she took a bite and immediately started celebrating. "This is so good. Why have I never had this before?" Reinhard couldn't help but smile slightly at her reaction. "Consider it a reward for your concern," he said. As Ramirez continued to enjoy her donut, Reinhard turned his attention inward, mentally asking Raphael about the progress. Report. "Good progress has been made, Master," Raphael responded. "The skills will be created in exactly 573 years. Reinhardt's initial reaction to Raphael's report was one of frustration. 573 years, he muttered, not hiding his irritation. He hadn't expected the process to take that long. Apologies, Master. The complexity of these skills requires extensive time to properly integrate, Raphael conveyed, her tone contrite. Reinhardt sighed, eventually deciding to push the matter out of his head. Very well, continue as planned, he said, resolving to be patient despite his initial disappointment. Just as he was about to refocus on his thoughts, a telepathic call interrupted him. The voice of his father echoed in his mind, clear and commanding. Reinhardt, come, we will be watching a very interesting sight. Reinhardt straightened, his frustration momentarily forgotten. Ramirez, I need to go, he said abruptly, his tone indicating the urgency of the situation. Without waiting for her response, he prepared to heed his father's summons. Reinhardt straightened, his frustration momentarily forgotten. Ramirez, I need to go, he said abruptly, his tone indicating the urgency of the situation. Without waiting for her response, he prepared to heed his father's summons. His figure blurred and vanished, reappearing in the sky as he flew at incredible speeds towards his father's location. As he soared through the sky, Reinhardt's mind returned to what Ramirez had done earlier. The presence of the hero's egg within him was undeniable, a new entity sprouted into his existence. A hero's egg was typically a mark of someone powerful and inherently good, destined to follow a path of righteousness. Reinhardt, however, had always considered himself above such simplistic dichotomies as good and evil. He operated on a plane of existence where those concepts were irrelevant, guided instead by his own principles and objectives. The idea of being branded with something as defining as a hero's egg was almost insulting. It suggested a destiny or alignment he had not chosen for himself. His thoughts turned to the notion of coexistence. Could a hero's egg and a demon lord's seed, entities that symbolized opposing forces, truly exist within the same being? The hero's egg was a symbol of light and justice, while the demon lord's seed represented darkness and power. Reinhardt pondered the implications. If they could coexist, it would make him an entity unlike any other. He would embody the ultimate balance of power and morality, transcending the limitations of both roles. But such a balance would be precarious, requiring constant vigilance to maintain. He could not afford any distractions or unnecessary burdens, which made Ramirez's actions even more irksome. As he neared his father's location, Reinhardt forced these thoughts aside. His father had summoned him for something significant, and he needed to focus entirely on that. The matter of the hero's egg could wait. There would be time enough to address its implications later. For now, he had to see what his father found so intriguing that he had called upon him so urgently. Reinhardt arrived at his father's humble abode, a simple wooden cabin nestled in a serene, forested area. Despite its unassuming exterior, the cabin exuded a warm and nostalgic feeling, reminiscent of simpler times. The air around it seemed almost enchanted, filled with a sense of peace and timelessness that was at odds with the immense power Reinhardt knew resided within. He landed gracefully at the cabin's entrance and took a moment to steady himself, pushing aside the lingering thoughts about the hero's egg. Entering the cabin, he was greeted by the familiar sight of his father, Veldanava, seated comfortably in a rustic chair. The room was modestly furnished, with a hearth crackling gently in the background, adding to the cozy atmosphere. Father, Reinhardt greeted, inclining his head respectfully. You summoned me. What is this interesting sight you mentioned? Veldanava, the creator of all things and the most powerful being in existence, turned his attention to Reinhardt with a calm, knowing smile. Ah, Reinhardt, I'm glad you came quickly, he said, his voice carrying an air of quiet authority. He gestured to a screen on the wall, an ethereal display shimmering with magical energy. Look here. Reinhardt followed his father's gesture and focused on the screen. It displayed a vivid scene, a fierce battle unfolding in real time. Warriors clashed with incredible power and precision, the very air around them crackling with energy. He watched intently, his sharp eyes analyzing every movement, every exchange of blows. What am I looking at? Reinhardt inquired, his curiosity piqued despite himself. The fighters on the screen were formidable, their skills and techniques hinting at extraordinary training and experience. Veldanava leaned back in his chair, his gaze never leaving the screen. These are the latest contenders in a conflict that has been brewing for some time, he explained. They represent the peak of their respective domains, each one a potential catalyst for significant change in our world. Reinhardt's interest deepened. His father rarely showed such interest in individual battles unless they held greater significance. And why is this particular fight so important? He asked, his mind already considering the broader implications. Veldanava's eyes twinkled with a mixture of amusement and seriousness. Because, my son, the outcome of this battle will set the stage for events that could reshape the balance of power. It is a delicate situation, one that requires careful observation. Reinhard continued to watch the screen intently, taking in the impressive display of skill and power. Veldanava, observing his son's focus, began to elaborate. The fighter in the golden armor is hero Rudra, Veldanava explained. He's one of the most formidable heroes in existence, his power and resolve unmatched by most. He's been battling Guy Crimson for many days now, and each encounter ends in a draw. Reinhard's eyes narrowed slightly as he watched Rudra's swift and precise movements. He knew Guy Crimson well, having assigned him the role of the world's mediator. They had fought before, and Reinhard had easily bested him. Seeing Guy now, locked in a seemingly endless struggle, piqued his interest. I see Guy is still as persistent as ever, Reinhard remarked, his tone carrying a hint of amusement. Veldanava nodded, his eyes twinkling with a mixture of amusement and pride. Indeed, despite your previous encounters, he continues to push his limits. Rudra, however, is a new player in this high-stakes game. His dedication to heroism and order is commendable. Reinhard observed Veldanava closely, noticing a rare expression of genuine happiness on his father's face. It was unusual for Veldanava to show such emotion, especially over a battle. You seem quite happy to talk about this, father, Reinhard noted, his curiosity piqued. Why is that? Veldanava simply pointed back to the screen, his smile widening slightly. Reinhard followed his father's gesture, his eyes once again locking onto the intense combat displayed before him. Watching Rudra and Guy clash, Reinhard began to understand. This wasn't just a battle, it was a living representation of the eternal struggle between order and chaos, light and darkness. Rudra's relentless pursuit of justice and Guy's embodiment of demonic power created a dynamic that fascinated Veldanava. It was a testament to the balance Veldanava had crafted in the world, a balance that required constant vigilance and adjustment. Reinhard continued to scrutinize the screen, his focus on the intense clash between Rudra and Guy. He pondered the potential lessons about balance and power, considering how they might apply to his own situation. However, something seemed off about his father's amusement. Veldanava was not one to be amused by philosophical notions alone. Reinhard glanced back at Veldanava, seeking further clarification. His father noticed his confusion and chuckled. Reinhard, you're missing the real spectacle here, Veldanava said, pointing again at the screen. Look closely at the sidelines. Reinhard shifted his gaze to the edges of the battlefield. To his surprise, he spotted two familiar figures. Velzard, the ice dragon, and Velgrind, the scorched dragon, were present. They were not fighting but rather cheering on the combatants with animated expressions. Your aunts seem to have taken a keen interest in this battle, Veldanava explained, his tone light and amused. Velzard followed Guy Crimson after their last fight ended in a draw. She was jealous, you see. Jealous that Guy had gained your acknowledgement. Reinhard raised an eyebrow, glancing at Velzard's enthusiastic cheers for Guy. The image of the usually stoic ice dragon cheering so openly was both surprising and slightly amusing. Velzard had always been fiercely competitive, especially when it came to matters involving their family. And Velgrind? Reinhard asked, turning his attention to the fiery dragoness who was cheering for Rudra with equal fervor. Veldanava's smile softened. Velgrind has deemed Rudra the love of her life. She fell for his charisma and resolve some time ago. They had a conversation with me about it. She believes in him deeply and supports him wholeheartedly. Reinhard watched the scene unfold with a new understanding. His aunts, powerful dragons in their own right, had found reasons to invest themselves in this ongoing conflict. Velzard's competitive nature had driven her to follow Guy, while Velgrind's romantic feelings had bound her to Rudra. So, this battle is not just about light and darkness, Reinhard mused aloud, a faint smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. It's also a personal matter for our family. Veldanava nodded. Indeed, it's fascinating to see how personal motivations and broader conflicts intertwine. This battle represents more than just a struggle for power, it's a convergence of personal desires and greater destinies. Reinhard felt a sense of kinship watching his aunt's antics. Despite the vast differences in their personalities and motivations, they were all connected by their familial bonds and shared histories. As he continued to watch the battle, he couldn't help but feel a deeper appreciation for the complex tapestry of relationships that made up their world. For now, he would observe and learn, ready to support his family in whatever way was needed. Reinhard conjured a seat with a casual wave of his hand, placing it beside his father's chair. He settled into it, the two of them sitting side by side, their eyes fixed on the screen displaying the ongoing battle. The sounds of clashing swords and roaring energies filled the air, but within the cabin, there was a profound silence. This was a rare moment for father and son, a time of peace and quiet where they could simply be in each other's company without the weight of titles and responsibilities. The two watched the battle unfold in companionable silence, appreciating the view in front of them. For Reinhard, these moments were precious. They allowed him to drop his usual demeanor of arrogance and pride, shedding the mantle of power that he wore so naturally. Here, in the presence of his father, he could simply be Reinhard from Earth, the man he once was, before destiny had thrust such immense responsibilities upon him. Veldanava glanced at his son, sensing the shift in his demeanor. He said nothing, understanding that sometimes words were unnecessary. These moments of silent bonding were where their true connection was nurtured, beyond the grandiose displays of power and the cosmic duties that bound them. Reinhard let out a small sigh, feeling the tension drain from his shoulders. He allowed himself to relax, absorbing the tranquil atmosphere of the cabin. He knew that these times were fleeting, but they were also grounding, reminding him of the simpler, more human side of his existence. As they continued to watch, the battle between Rudra and Guy raged on, a testament to the unyielding spirits of both combatants. Velzard and Velgrind's cheers added a unique, almost familial touch to the scene, reinforcing the idea that even amidst great power and cosmic struggles, personal connections and emotions played a crucial role. Reinhard's mind wandered back to his life on Earth, the memories of his past life mingling with his current experiences. He thought of the people he had known, the simpler challenges he had faced, and the ordinary joys he had once taken for granted. These reflections brought a sense of clarity and perspective, a reminder that despite his immense power, he was still shaped by his past. Veldanava, sensing his son's introspection, placed a hand on Reinhard's shoulder, a silent gesture of support and understanding. Reinhard looked at his father and offered a small, genuine smile, feeling a warmth that transcended their usual dynamic. For now, they would sit together, appreciating the chaotic beauty of the battle before them and the peaceful connection they shared. It was a moment of tranquility in a world of constant turmoil, a reminder of the bonds that grounded them amidst the vastness of their responsibilities. 9 comments 0 vote. Sylvia L. Rue. Feel free to ignore this chapter. I really hate the way I wrote it. Also, bear with me guys, there are 23 chapters more of these shits. I regretted trying to change his personality, so I am returning it to the original. As Reinhard and Veldanava continued to watch the battle unfold in comfortable silence, Veldanava broke the tranquility with a question that had been lingering in his mind. Reinhard, he began, his tone casual but laced with curiosity, I couldn't help but notice that your energy levels suddenly plummeted earlier. Care to explain what happened? Reinhard glanced at his father, contemplating how much to reveal. He decided on a vague response, not wanting to delve into the complexities just yet. I'm in the process of creating a new skill, he replied simply, keeping his explanation concise. Veldanava studied his son for a moment, his eyes reflecting a depth of understanding. Though Reinhard's answer was intentionally vague, Veldanava seemed to grasp the underlying significance. A faint smile tugged at the corners of his mouth, and he nodded slowly. I see, he said thoughtfully. You're always pushing boundaries, seeking new heights. It's one of the things I admire about you, Reinhard. Reinhard felt a flicker of warmth at his father's words, appreciating the support implicit in them. Veldanava continued, his voice gentle yet resolute. No matter what path you choose or what goals you pursue, know that I will always support you. Your journey is your own, and I have faith in your decisions. Reinhard nodded, feeling a sense of reassurance wash over him. Thank you, father, he said sincerely. That means a lot. Veldanava's smile widened, and he returned his gaze to the screen, where the fierce battle continued. It's important to remember that even in the pursuit of great power, we remain connected to those we care about. Our bonds give us strength and purpose. Reinhard absorbed his father's words, reflecting on their significance. Despite his immense power and the grand ambitions he harbored, the support of his family provided a foundation that anchored him. It was a reminder that, no matter how high he soared, he was never truly alone. Reinhard continued to watch the unfolding battle, his mind occasionally drifting back to his father's words. The support and faith Veldanava had expressed bolstered his resolve, reminding him of the strength that came from their bond. As he observed the scene, something else caught his attention. His father's gaze seemed unusually focused, particularly on the girl cheering beside Velgrind. Curiosity piqued, Reinhard decided to address it. Father, he began, a hint of amusement in his voice, I've noticed that your attention has been quite fixed on someone besides the fighters. The girl cheering beside Velgrind, in particular. Do you fancy her? Veldanava's eyes twinkled with a mixture of surprise and amusement at his son's perceptiveness. He glanced at Reinhard, a soft smile playing on his lips. You're quite observant, as always, he replied, his tone light yet contemplative. The girl you speak of is indeed quite special. Reinhard raised an eyebrow, intrigued. Special? In what way? he asked, leaning back in his chair, genuinely interested in his father's response. Veldanova's gaze shifted back to the screen, where the girl was energetically cheering for Rudra, her enthusiasm matching Belgrin's. Her name is Lucia, he began, a fondness evident in his voice. She possesses a unique spirit and strength that draws people to her. There's an inherent purity and resilience in her that's quite rare. Reinhard studied his father's expression, noting the warmth and admiration in his eyes. It was a rare sight, seeing Veldanova so captivated by someone. It seems she has made quite an impression on you, Reinhard remarked, his tone thoughtful. Veldanova nodded, his smile deepening. Indeed, she has. Lucia reminds me of the enduring qualities that make life truly remarkable. Her presence is a reminder of the beauty and strength that can be found in even the most challenging circumstances. Reinhard considered his father's words, reflecting on the importance of such qualities. It was clear that Lucia held a special place in Veldanova's heart, and Reinhard couldn't help but feel a sense of respect for someone who could inspire such admiration in his father. As they continued to watch the battle, Reinhard's thoughts wandered back to his own goals and the challenges that lay ahead. The presence of figures like Lucia, Velzard, Belgrind, and even Rudra and Guy, highlighted the intricate web of relationships and motivations that shaped their world. It was a reminder that strength and power were not solely defined by individual prowess, but also by the connections and influences of those around them. Reinhard glanced at Veldanova, feeling a renewed sense of determination and purpose. Father, he said, breaking the comfortable silence once more, thank you for sharing this with me. Veldanova looked at his son, his eyes filled with pride and affection. You're welcome, Reinhard. With those words, the two continued to watch the battle, appreciating not only the spectacle before them but also the deeper meanings and relationships that it represented. The fight raged on, neither side giving an inch as the hours passed. Blows were exchanged with precision and fury, each combatant pushing their limits. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, both Rudra and Guy Crimson stood panting, their bodies battered and bruised, but their spirits unbroken. The battle ended in a draw, a testament to the incredible resilience and skill of both warriors. Velzard quickly moved to Guy's side, her expression softening as she tended to his injuries with a mix of concern and admiration. Lucia and Belgrind, on the other hand, rushed to Rudra, their efforts focused on helping the exhausted hero. It was a scene of tender care and mutual respect, a stark contrast to the brutal combat that had just unfolded. Reinhard stood up from his seat, stretching slightly as he prepared to take his leave. I've seen enough for today, he said, turning to his father. Thank you for this, father. It was enlightening. Veldanova nodded, his expression warm. Take care, Reinhard. Remember, you are always welcome here. Reinhard gave a slight nod in acknowledgement before stepping out of the cabin. The fresh air greeted him, and he took a moment to savor it. It had been a long time since he had left the confines of Romulus's labyrinth, decades in fact. As he walked away from the cabin, a thought crossed his mind. Perhaps it was time to revisit the world he once roamed so freely. The idea grew more appealing with each step. The cardinal world held countless memories and experiences, and despite his power and responsibilities, there was a part of him that yearned to reconnect with it. Reinhard paused, looking out at the horizon. The labyrinth had been a place of solitude and reflection, but now, the world beckoned with its endless possibilities. With a final glance back at the cabin, Reinhard made up his mind. He would visit the world again, explore its wonders, and perhaps, in the process, rediscover aspects of himself that had been set aside in the pursuit of power and duty. Reinhard set off on his journey, leaving behind the comforting familiarity of his father's cabin. The world spread out before him, vast and full of promise. As he roamed the lands, he encountered diverse landscapes, towering mountains, sprawling forests, and shimmering lakes. Each step was a reminder of the world's beauty and complexity, a stark contrast to the confined spaces of Romulus's labyrinth. Days turned into weeks as Reinhard traveled, his presence barely noticeable to the ordinary inhabitants of the world. He moved with a quiet grace, his powerful aura suppressed so as not to disturb the delicate balance of the lands he traversed. He took in the sights and sounds, savoring the freedom and tranquility that came with his journey. Eventually, Reinhard arrived at a place that piqued his interest, a humongous tree with sprawling roots that wove through the earth like ancient veins. Houses were nestled within the roots, creating a hidden sanctuary that exuded a serene, almost mystical aura. Reinhard walked through the area, his curiosity growing with each step. As he explored the base of the massive tree, he couldn't help but feel a sense of awe at the intricate craftsmanship and the natural beauty that surrounded him. However, his peaceful exploration was abruptly interrupted. He felt a shift in the air, a tension that hinted at hidden dangers. Within moments, Hundreds of elves emerged from their hiding places, surrounding him in a tight circle. Each elf was poised to attack, their bows drawn and magical energies crackling in the air. Reinhard observed them calmly, noting their determination and readiness. The leader of the elves, a tall figure with striking features and an aura of authority, stepped forward. "Intruder," the elf leader called out, their voice steady and commanding. "State your purpose here, or face the consequences of your trespassing." Reinhard met the leader's gaze, his expression hardening. He was not one to appreciate being treated with hostility, especially by those he deemed far weaker than himself. "I am merely passing through, exploring the world," he replied, his tone clipped and authoritative. To emphasize his point, Reinhard allowed a fraction of his aura to seep out, a mere hint of his overwhelming power. The effect was immediate. The elves, sensing the immense pressure and power emanating from him, recoiled in fear. Their weapons wavered, and whispers of panic spread through their ranks. The leader struggled to maintain composure but could not hide the unease in their eyes. Reinhard watched them coolly, his aura a reminder of the vast difference in their strengths. "I assure you, you won't die. I am Reinhard, and I seek only to see and understand the beauty of this place." The name seemed to stir something among the elves. Whispers spread through their ranks, and the leader's eyes widened slightly, recognizing the significance of his name. The leader lowered their weapon, signaling the others to do the same. "You are Reinhard?" the leader asked, their tone now tinged with curiosity and respect. "The one spoken of in legends?" Reinhard nodded curtly. "Indeed, I have traveled far and wide, and I wish to learn more about this place and its inhabitants." The tension in the air eased, and the elves relaxed their stances, though they remained alert. The leader stepped forward, extending a hand in a gesture of peace. "Welcome to our home, Reinhard," they said. "I am Elowin, the guardian of this sanctuary. We are honored by your presence." Reinhard accepted the gesture with a nod, his demeanor still cool and distant. "Very well, Elowin, show me what this place has to offer." Elowin nodded and gestured for him to follow. "Our elven empress will want to meet you. Please, this way." As Elowin led him deeper into their sanctuary, Reinhard maintained his aloofness. Despite his initial irritation, he couldn't deny a growing curiosity about the hidden world within the roots of the humongous tree. Reinhard followed Elowin deeper into the sanctuary, his curiosity mingling with a lingering irritation. The elves maintained a respectful distance as they walked, their wariness evident. They eventually reached a grand entrance, intricately carved and adorned with symbols of elven heritage. Beyond the doors lay the throne room, the heart of their domain. The doors opened, and Reinhard stepped inside. The room was vast, filled with natural light filtering through the canopy above. At the far end sat Sylvia El-Ru, the elven empress, on an ornate throne. Her presence commanded attention, but Reinhard immediately noted her lack of deference. She remained seated, her gaze steady as she observed him. Reinhard's eyes narrowed slightly. He disliked the subtle message her posture conveyed. Despite not showing overt arrogance, her decision to remain seated irked him. He approached with a measured pace, his aura restrained but unmistakable. "Welcome, Reinhard," Sylvia said, her voice calm and composed. "I am Sylvia El-Ru, Empress of the Elves. It is an honor to meet one of your stature." Reinhard didn't nod his head. "Sylvia El-Ru," he acknowledged. "I recognize your name. You are one of Twilight Valentine's creations, are you not?" A flicker of surprise crossed Sylvia's face, quickly masked by her composed demeanor. "Indeed, I am," she replied. "Twilight Valentine was a mentor and guide. He spoke of you often." Reinhard's gaze sharpened. "Twilight Valentine, the one who once dared to offend me but managed to earn my forgiveness. He was fortunate to survive our encounter." Sylvia's composure wavered for a moment, a sign that Reinhard's words had struck a chord. She remained seated, though, her eyes meeting his with a mixture of curiosity and caution. "You speak of strength and forgiveness, Reinhard," Sylvia said. "What wisdom do you wish to impart upon us?" Reinhard stepped closer, his presence commanding the room. With a single tap of his finger, he shattered Sylvia's throne, sending splinters flying. The force of his gesture left Sylvia standing, her expression a mix of shock and fear. The elves around them gasped, taking a step back, clearly intimidated. "Understand this, Sylvia," he began, his tone cold and authoritative. "There is no king before me. Strength is not just about power or dominance. It is about knowing when to show restraint, when to forgive, and when to remind others of their place. Twilight Valentine learned this lesson, and so must you." Sylvia listened intently, her posture remaining composed but her eyes reflecting a deeper understanding. Reinhard continued, his words carrying the weight of his experience and authority. "True strength lies in the ability to rise above petty arrogance and recognize the broader picture," Reinhard said. You sat upon that throne, a symbol of your authority. But remember, it is not the throne that defines your strength, it is your actions, your decisions, and your ability to acknowledge those who stand above you. Sylvia nodded slowly, absorbing his words. I understand, Reinhard. Your presence here is a reminder of the delicate balance we must maintain. Reinhard's expression remained cold and unyielding. Good. Remember this lesson, Sylvia Elru. In the grand scheme of things, we all have roles to play. Embrace yours with humility and wisdom. Without waiting for her response, Reinhard turned on his heel and strode out of the throne room, his aura flaring with barely restrained power. The elves around him trembled, sensing the immense pressure he exuded. As he stepped outside, the very air seemed to crackle with energy, threatening to tear the sanctuary apart. Reinhard walked away from the elven sanctuary, his aura still pulsating. The threat was clear. He could destroy the entire nation of Sarian if he wished. His patience was thin, and his tolerance for disrespect even thinner. He had given Sylvia a lesson she would not soon forget, and now it was time to move on. After Reinhard's departure, the throne room fell into a tense silence. Sylvia Elru, who had managed to maintain her composure during the encounter, felt her knees give way beneath her. She collapsed to the ground, her breath coming in ragged gasps. The fear she had suppressed now surged through her, leaving her trembling. The elves who had witnessed the scene were equally shaken. They exchanged nervous glances, still feeling the lingering presence of Reinhard's immense power. The threat he left behind was palpable, a reminder of their precarious position. Sylvia wiped the sweat from her brow, her mind racing. Reinhard's aura had been overwhelming, a stark contrast to anything she had ever experienced. He was an anomaly, a being of such power and authority that he defied the natural order of the world. She could now understand, to some extent, the thoughts of her creator, Twilight Valentine, regarding Reinhard. We are fortunate to have survived his wrath, she muttered, her voice barely above a whisper. It was my fault for acting that way, for not showing the respect he demanded. She slowly got to her feet, the weight of the encounter still heavy on her shoulders. Sylvia knew that this would be a turning point for her and her people. Reinhard's visit had left an indelible mark, a lesson in humility and the true meaning of strength. Elowin approached her cautiously, her concern evident. Are you all right, Your Majesty? Sylvia nodded, though her expression was weary. I will be. We must ensure that we never provoke such a being again. Reinhard's power is beyond comprehension, and we cannot afford to make enemies of such entities. The elves around her nodded in agreement, their respect for their empress tinged with newfound fear. They had all witnessed the potential for devastation that Reinhard carried with him, and it was a lesson none of them would forget. Sylvia took a deep breath, regaining her composure. We must learn from this and move forward. Let this be a reminder of the delicate balance we must maintain in our dealings with those more powerful than ourselves. With that, she turned to address her people, her voice steady and resolute. Let us honor Reinhard's visit by becoming stronger, wiser, and more united. We have been given a second chance, and we must not squander it. The elves bowed their heads in agreement, their resolve strengthened by Sylvia's words. They had survived Reinhard's wrath, and now it was time to rebuild and grow, always mindful of the lessons imparted by the powerful being who had graced their sanctuary with his presence. As they dispersed, Sylvia couldn't help but reflect on the encounter. She had faced Reinhard and lived to tell the tale. It was a humbling experience, one that would shape her leadership and her people's future. She vowed to honor the lessons learned and to never forget the overwhelming power and presence of Reinhard, the anomaly who had briefly crossed their path. 9 comments 0 vote. Gladsheimer. This Gladscheim is fake. No need to take it seriously, guys. Throw some stones too. Reinhard left the elven sanctuary, his mood soured by the encounter. The actions of Sylvia and her people had been a reminder of the triviality and disrespect that often accompanied those who believed themselves powerful. He needed something to clear his mind, something to channel his frustration and restore his sense of purpose. As he roamed the land, his thoughts turned to his Braya, the manifestation of his will and power. During his training with Veldora in the void of space, he had accumulated a staggering 100 million souls, erasing countless planets and their inhabitants in the process. The scale of his destruction was immense, and it had only served to amplify his already formidable strength. Reinhard's lips curved into a cold smile. The thought of his Braya growing even more potent intrigued him. He was well aware of the fear and awe his presence inspired, and the idea of wielding an even greater power was tantalizing. His Braya, already a force of unparalleled devastation, had the potential to reshape entire worlds. As he walked, his mind began to focus on the possibilities. The energy he had expended earlier in the creation of his skills would eventually be replenished, and with it, his Braya would become even more formidable. The prospect of such overwhelming power was a balm to his frayed nerves, a reminder of his place at the pinnacle of existence. His thoughts were interrupted by a flicker of movement in the distance. Reinhardt's sharp gaze locked onto the source, and he recognized the familiar figure of Veldora, the storm dragon. The dragon's massive form was unmistakable, a beacon of raw power and destruction. Reinhardt altered his course, heading towards Veldora. The dragon's presence was a welcome distraction, a chance to test his limits and perhaps find some measure of satisfaction. As he approached, Veldora turned, sensing Reinhardt's arrival. Reinhardt. Veldora's voice boomed, a mix of excitement and curiosity. What brings you here? I needed a distraction, Reinhardt replied, his tone cool and measured. The elves were tiresome. Veldora chuckled, a deep, rumbling sound. Ah, the little creatures can be annoying, can't they? What do you have in mind? Reinhardt's smile was a mere twitch of his lips. I was thinking about my powers. It's been a while since I've truly tested its limits. Veldora's eyes gleamed with interest. A test, you say? That sounds intriguing. What do you propose? Reinhardt's gaze hardened, a fierce determination lighting his eyes. We find a suitable target. Something that will challenge us both. I want to see just how far my power can go. The dragon's grin widened, showing rows of sharp teeth. I like the sound of that. There are plenty of worlds out there, ripe for the taking. Shall we? Reinhardt nodded, his excitement tempered by his usual cold demeanor. Lead the way. With that, the two titans of destruction set off, their combined power radiating through the void. The promise of a new challenge, a new test of their abilities, was exactly what Reinhardt needed to cleanse his mind and reaffirm his position. His Braya, fueled by the souls he had collected and the power he had amassed, would grow even stronger. As they traveled, Reinhardt's thoughts turned inward, contemplating the nature of his power and the endless potential that lay before him. The universe was vast, and there were always new challenges to conquer, new limits to shatter. In the grand scheme of things, the petty actions of the elves were insignificant. What mattered was the pursuit of true strength, the relentless drive to dominate and surpass all others. Reinhardt's cold smile returned. The future was his to shape, and with Veldora by his side, there were no limits to what he could achieve. The promise of absolute power was a goal worth striving for, and nothing would stand in his way. Reinhardt and Veldora left the cardinal world, their combined presence creating ripples through the fabric of the galaxy. As they roamed the vast expanse, Reinhardt's mind was set on finding a suitable planet to unleash his Braya, an act that would not only test his limits but also reinforce his dominance. After what seemed like an eternity of silent travel, Reinhardt's keen eyes spotted a planet teeming with life, its surface dotted with cities and civilizations unaware of the impending cataclysm. His decision was instantaneous. This would be the stage for his Braya. Here, Reinhardt announced, his voice carrying an unyielding finality. Veldora nodded, sensing the gravity of the moment. Reinhardt floated above the planet, his presence a harbinger of doom. He closed his eyes and began the Germanic chant for his Braya, the ancient words resonating with a power that transcended time and space. Meine Braya ist der Weg der ewigen Verdammnis. Der Tod für alle, die mir stahen. Die Seelen der Millionen schreien in meinem Namen. Ich bin das Licht und die Dunkelheit. Die Ewigkeit gehört mir. As he chanted, a palpable shift occurred in the galaxy. Light from countless stars and suns was drawn towards him, converging into a singularity of darkness and brilliance. The sheer force of his Braya's summoning caused a vast swath of the galaxy to dim, almost as if a cosmic eclipse had taken hold. Stars flickered and died, their energy consumed by the growing power within Reinhardt. The planet below began to tremble, its inhabitants looking skyward in terror and awe. Reinhardt's aura expanded, enveloping the celestial bodies around him. His chant grew louder, the words echoing through the void, each syllable imbued with the weight of 100 million souls. Es gibt kein Entkommen, kein Zuflucht für meiner Macht. Ich bin der Anfang und das Ende. Der Schrecken und die Erlösung. In meinem Namen werdet ihr alle fallen. A vortex of energy spiraled around Reinhardt, forming a massive sphere of dark light that blotted out the stars. The sheer scale of his Braya was unprecedented, growing larger and more potent with each passing moment. It reached out, a colossal entity that dwarfed the moon, its presence a testament to the staggering number of souls Reinhardt had absorbed. The alternate dimension began to take shape, a realm of eternal night and despair. Within this domain, Reinhardt's power was absolute. The planet below was caught in the gravitational pull of this new moon-sized world, its fate sealed by the overwhelming force that now dominated the galaxy. Veldora watched in awe, his eyes wide with a mix of admiration and respect. Reinhardt's Braya had reached a level of magnificence that was almost incomprehensible, a display of power that redefined the very essence of destruction. The summoning climaxed in a blinding flash of light and darkness, the galaxy itself seeming to shudder under the strain. When the light faded, an immense alternate dimension hung in the void, nearly the size of a moon. It was a realm of Reinhardt's making, a testament to his unrivaled might and the boundless potential of his Braya. Reinhardt opened his eyes, his gaze cold and triumphant. He had done it. The galaxy bore witness to his unparalleled strength, a reminder that he stood above all others. The planet below, now a mere footnote in the wake of his creation, was a testament to the power he wielded. Mina Braya, he murmured, his voice a blend of satisfaction and authority. It is complete. Veldora nodded, his own power a mere shadow compared to the grandeur of what Reinhardt had summoned. Impressive as always, Reinhardt. Reinhardt's smile was thin, devoid of warmth but filled with a cold satisfaction. This is but a mere imitation of the real thing. Reinhardt stood at the center of his newly formed fake Gladsheimer, a monumental alternate dimension that towered over the galaxy like a dark, ethereal moon. The grandeur of it was beyond anything most beings could comprehend, yet Reinhardt knew it was still but a fraction of his true potential. This Gladsheimer, Reinhardt began, his voice echoing through the void, is merely a shadow of my real power. It doesn't contain the hells right now because a significant portion of my power remains sealed within the 3 swastikas my father created. Veldora nodded, his massive form casting a long shadow. Still, what you've created here is nothing short of extraordinary. Reinhardt's cold gaze drifted to the planet below. The mere presence of Gladsheimer had sent the world into turmoil, its surface cracking and heaving as it struggled to withstand the immense gravitational and magical forces. Cities crumbled, oceans boiled, and the sky was a chaotic swirl of energy. With a satisfied, heartless smile, Reinhardt conjured a throne from the ether and took his seat. The throne was a dark, imposing structure, fitting for the ruler of such a domain. He watched the planet below, his eyes reflecting a mix of amusement and detachment. This is only the beginning, he said softly, almost to himself. When the seals are broken, when my full power is unleashed, Gladsheimer will be complete. The hells will return, and this shadow will become a reality that none can withstand. He conjured a goblet of wine, the liquid inside shimmering with a dark, otherworldly hue. He took a leisurely sip, the taste of it a mere afterthought compared to the pleasure of witnessing the planet's slow destruction. Veldora remained silent, sensing that Reinhardt was lost in his own thoughts. The dragon knew better than to interrupt these moments. Reinhardt's ambitions were vast, and the power he wielded was beyond comprehension. This display was but a prelude to the greater cataclysms that awaited the universe. Reinhardt's smile widened slightly as he observed the chaos below. The sight of a world teetering on the brink of annihilation was a potent reminder of his dominance, a tangible proof of his unparalleled might. The lives lost, the civilizations crumbled, all were mere footnotes in his grand design. He leaned back in his throne, feeling a rare moment of contentment. Despite the seals on his power, despite the limitations imposed by his father's swastikas, he had demonstrated once again that he was a force to be reckoned with. The future held boundless possibilities, and Reinhardt intended to seize every one of them. For now, he would revel in this moment, savoring the wine and the view of a planet undone by his mere presence. The galaxy was his to command, and the universe would continue to bend to his will. Reinhardt still seated on the throne, his gaze fixed on the chaos unfolding below. The planet, teetering on the brink of annihilation, was a testament to his power. But he had a new plan for his Gladsheimer. This golden domain of his would become a new moon in the cardinal world. He closed his eyes and reached out with his mind, sending a telepathic message to his father, Veldanava. Father, I am moving Gladsheimer to the cardinal world. Prepare to handle the planet's balance. Veldanava's response was swift. Understood, Reinhardt, I will make the necessary adjustments. With his father's confirmation, Reinhardt focused his immense power on relocating Gladsheimer. The vast, golden realm began to shift, tearing through the fabric of space as it moved towards the cardinal world. The transition was seamless, a testament to Reinhardt's control over his domain. As Gladsheimer settled into orbit around the cardinal world, its presence was immediately felt by the powerful beings who inhabited the planet. Dagruel, the true ancestor giant, looked up from his fortress. His eyes widened at the sight of the new moon, its golden light casting an eerie glow over the land. Reinhardt, what have you created this time? He muttered, a mix of awe and trepidation in his voice. Guy Crimson, the demon lord, stood atop his palace, his gaze fixed on the celestial anomaly. So, Reinhardt has decided to make his move. This will be interesting, he said with a smirk, feeling a familiar challenge in the air. Velzard, the ice dragon, observed the new moon along with Guy. Her expression was one of curiosity and respect. Riene's power continues to grow. I must stay vigilant. Velgrind, the scorched dragon, felt a surge of energy as she gazed at Gladsheimer. He never ceases to amaze. What are you planning, Rione? She wondered, her thoughts drifting to their past encounters. The primordial angels, each attuned to the shifts in cosmic balance, sensed the arrival of Gladsheimer. Their leader, Feldway, spoke to the others. Lord Reinhard has brought forth something extraordinary. We must observe and understand its implications. Twilight Valentine, the enigmatic vampire, felt a shiver of excitement. Reinhard, always the one to make a statement, he said, his eyes gleaming with interest, not knowing that this would be his last day to live. Sylvia, still recovering from her encounter with Reinhard, looked up at the new moon with a mixture of fear and reverence. He is beyond our comprehension, she whispered, grateful to have survived his wrath. Other powerful beings across the world felt the shift as well. Each reacted in their own way, but all recognized the significance of Reinhard's creation. Gladsheimer was not just a moon, it was a declaration of his dominance, a new chapter in the saga of his unparalleled power. Reinhard, sitting in his throne, watched as Gladsheimer settled into its new position. He could sense the reactions of those below, their awe and trepidation feeding his satisfaction. He raised his goblet of wine, toasting to his latest achievement. Let them watch, he said to himself. Let them see the power of Reinhard Nava. With that, he took a long, deliberate sip, savoring the moment. As Gladsheimer settled into its new orbit around the cardinal world, a ripple of energy surged through the planet. The skies darkened momentarily, and an ethereal voice echoed through the minds of every being on the planet. It was the voice of Veldanava, using the authority of the world itself to make an announcement. Hear me, inhabitants of my world. A new dimension has been created, a realm of immense power and unparalleled majesty. This domain, known as Gladsheimer, now orbits our world, a beacon of golden light and ultimate strength. It is a creation of Reinhard Nava, a testament to his unyielding will and mastery. Arrangements are being made to maintain the balance and order of our world in light of this profound addition. Let all recognize and respect the power that has been manifested. Gladsheimer stands as a force higher even than the heavens themselves, an indomitable realm that reshapes the fabric of our reality. Reinhard, still seated on his throne within Gladsheimer, felt a deep satisfaction. The acknowledgement by the world was more than just a formality, it was a validation of his supremacy. His domain was now officially recognized as a force beyond the conventional understanding of power. Reinhard stood, his aura emanating a sense of supreme confidence. He looked out over the vast expanse of his domain, the golden light of Gladsheimer illuminating the universe. This is but the beginning, he said to himself, his voice echoing through the halls of his grand creation. The world acknowledges my power, and soon, all realms will do the same. With a final glance at the planet below, Reinhard turned his attention back to his throne, a sense of accomplishment washing over him. The journey was far from over, but this milestone was a significant one. Gladsheimer was now a force to be reckoned with, a beacon of his unmatched power and ambition. Twilight Valentine stood in their secluded chamber, an aura of elation surrounding them. They had just completed the creation of Luminous Valentine many months ago, a being they considered their magnum opus. With unmatched potential and the promise of greatness, Luminous was the embodiment of their hopes for the future. She is our masterpiece, Twilight murmured to themselves, their eyes gleaming with pride as they reviewed their research notes. Her potential surpasses all others. She will lead us into a new era. The chamber was filled with ancient tomes and alchemical apparatus, the tools of Twilight's trade. They worked meticulously, ensuring that every aspect of Luminous creation was perfect. The anticipation of what Luminous could achieve filled them with a sense of fulfillment they had never known. Suddenly, the door to the chamber creaked open. Twilight turned, expecting to see one of their subordinates, but instead, standing there in all her radiant glory, was Luminous Valentine. Her presence filled the room, an aura of immense power radiating from her. Ah, Luminous, Twilight began, a smile spreading across their face. I was just thinking about your potential and the future you will create. Luminous' expression was unreadable as she stepped further into the room. Twilight Valentine, she said, her voice calm but carrying an undertone of something far more dangerous. You have created me with such high expectations. Twilight's smile faltered slightly at her tone. Of course, you are the pinnacle of my work, the culmination of all my research and effort. You are our future. Luminous' eyes glowed with an unsettling light. And what if I told you that the future you envision is not the one I seek? Before Twilight could react, Luminous raised her hand, and a brilliant light began to emanate from her palm. Twilight's eyes widened in realization and horror. Luminous, what are you? The words were cut off as Luminous unleashed her greatest sanctuary disintegration spell. The room was filled with a blinding light, and Twilight Valentine felt their very essence being torn apart by the sheer force of luminous power. The ancient tomes and alchemical tools disintegrated into dust, consumed by the overwhelming energy. Twilight's form began to dissolve, their screams echoing through the chamber. They had not anticipated this betrayal, this sudden turn of events. Luminous, their masterpiece, was killing them with the very power they had imbued in her. As the light faded, nothing remained of Twilight Valentine but a pile of ashes. Luminous stood over the remnants, her expression still calm and unreadable. "You created me to be the greatest," she said softly, almost to herself. "And now, I will fulfill that destiny on my terms." With that, she turned and left the chamber, leaving behind the legacy of Twilight Valentine in ruins. The divine ancestor was no more, and Luminous Valentine, the being of unparalleled potential, stepped into the future she would shape with her own hands. 17 comments 0 vote. Blessing of Destruction. Reinhard reclined on his golden throne, the vast expanse of Gladsheimer stretching out before him. His gaze, usually sharp and discerning, softened as he allowed himself a rare moment of rest. The power of his domain, his own creation, lulled him into a state of serene slumber. He intended it to be a brief nap, just enough to clear his mind and renew his focus. However, when he awoke, he realized that years had passed. Rising from his throne, Reinhard felt a disturbance, a sensation that was both familiar and unsettling. It was as if a being of immense power, akin to his own, had emerged within the cardinal world. His curiosity piqued, Reinhard extended his senses, searching for the source of this disturbance. The answer came swiftly: Lucia. The one his father Veldanava fancied. The realization struck him with clarity. The birth of Milam was imminent, and this event had stirred the very fabric of the world. Deciding to investigate, Reinhard prepared to leave Gladsheimer. As he did, he couldn't help but feel a mixture of curiosity and anticipation. Milam, a being destined for great power and significance, was about to enter the world, and Reinhard wanted to witness this momentous occasion firsthand. With a thought, he teleported from his domain, crossing the vast distances between Gladsheimer and the cardinal world in an instant. He appeared in a secluded forest near Lucia's location, the trees bowing under the weight of his presence. His aura, though restrained, caused the very air to crackle with energy. Reinhard walked through the forest, his steps soundless and his expression composed. He soon reached a clearing where Lucia stood, her form glowing with an ethereal light. She was preparing for the birth, her aura resonating with an intensity that matched the significance of the event. "Lucia," Reinhard greeted, his voice calm but carrying an undercurrent of authority. Lucia turned to him, her eyes widening in surprise. "Reinhard, I didn't expect you to be here." Reinhard inclined his head slightly. "I sensed a familiar presence. It seems the birth of your child is near." Lucia nodded, her expression a mix of exhaustion and determination. "Yes, it is. She will be here soon." Reinhard stepped closer, his gaze fixed on Lucia. "My father has a fondness for you, Lucia. That alone merits my interest in this event. But more than that, Milam's birth is a momentous occasion for the world." Lucia smiled faintly. "Thank you, Reinhard. Your presence here means a lot." Reinhard's eyes softened, a rare display of empathy. "Milam will be a force to be reckoned with. Her destiny is intertwined with the fate of this world. I will ensure she has the guidance she needs." Lucia nodded, a look of gratitude in her eyes. "I trust you, Reinhard. Milam will need someone like you." As the moments passed, the atmosphere grew charged with anticipation. Reinhard remained by Lucia's side, his presence a silent promise of protection and support. As the moments drew near, the air thickened with anticipation. Lucia's glow intensified, signaling that the birth was imminent. Suddenly, a presence equally powerful like Reinhard's filled the clearing. Veldanava appeared, his form radiating divine light, and by his side stood Rudra, Lucia's brother, and Velgrind. Veldanava's eyes were soft as he gazed lovingly at his wife, who was about to give birth. "Lucia," Veldanava said gently, moving to stand beside her. His voice was filled with warmth and love. "You've been so strong." Lucia smiled weakly, her hand reaching out to grasp Veldanava's. "Veldanava, it's almost time." Veldanava nodded, then turned to acknowledge Reinhard. "Reinhard, my son, thank you for coming." Reinhard's gaze met his father's, and for a moment, the two stood in silent communication. Reinhard could sense it, the faint but undeniable aura of impending death surrounding Veldanava. Despite his immense power, Veldanava's end was drawing near. Reinhard's heart tightened at the thought. Veldanava was more than just a powerful being, he was his father. "Father," Reinhard began, his voice uncharacteristically hesitant. "Are you sure about this?" Veldanava's eyes held a serene acceptance. Yes, Reinhard, this is the path I have chosen. The birth of Milam will bring about a new era, and my time has come. Reinhard's usual stoic demeanor faltered. The prospect of losing his father, despite all his strength and pride, was troubling. But Veldanava's joyous and peaceful expression stopped him from voicing his protest. It was clear that Veldanava had made peace with his fate. Veldanava's voice was calm and resolute. Reinhard, you have always been my pride. Trust in the future. Your sister will need your guidance and strength. Reinhard's gaze softened, a rare vulnerability showing in his eyes. Very well. If this is what you wish, then I will honor it. Milam shall have my blessing. As Lucia's contractions intensified, Veldanava stayed close by her side, his presence a source of comfort and strength. Reinhard stepped forward, raising his hand. A golden light enveloped it, resonating with the power of his domain, Gladsheimer. I, Reinhard Nava, bestow my blessing upon Milam Nava. May her path be filled with strength, wisdom, and unyielding power, Reinhard declared. The golden light flowed from his hand and enveloped Lucia, infusing her with Reinhard's blessing. The light seemed to meld with Lucia's aura, amplifying the energy surrounding her. Veldanava's eyes glistened with pride and gratitude as he watched his son impart such a powerful gift. Report. Ultimate skill Wrathful King Satanel has been handed to individual, Milam Nava. Recreation of the skill has been completed eons ago and is now ready to be replicated. Among all of the skills that Reinhard wanted, he made sure that Satanel would be replicated first because he is aware that Milam should be the owner of it. As the energy subsided, Lucia let out a final, powerful cry, and the clearing was filled with a blinding light. When it faded, a small, radiant being lay in Lucia's arms. Milam Nava had been born, her presence already exuding an aura of immense potential and power. Veldanava, overcome with emotion, leaned down to kiss Lucia and then their newborn daughter. Welcome to the world, Milam, he whispered softly. Reinhard stood back, observing the scene with a mix of solemnity and determination. He knew that the future held many challenges, but with Milam now a part of it, and with Veldanava's wishes clear in his mind, he was ready to face whatever lay ahead. Rudra and Velgrind also moved closer, their expressions filled with wonder and joy. The family gathered around the newborn, each of them understanding the significance of this moment. Reinhard, feeling a deep sense of duty and resolve, turned his gaze back to the horizon. The radiant moment of Milam's birth was both a blessing and a curse. As the light surrounding the newborn faded, Lucia's strength began to wane. The energy required to bring such a powerful being into the world had taken its toll on her. Lucia, cradling Milam in her arms, looked up at Veldanava, her eyes filled with love and an unspoken understanding. Veldanava, our daughter is extraordinary. She will change the world. Veldanava's expression was one of deep sorrow and pride. Lucia, you have given us a miracle. But, you must stay with us. Lucia shook her head weakly, her breath coming in shallow gasps. My time is over, my love. Milam needs you now. Guide her, protect her, as you have always protected us. Rudra knelt beside her, his face a mask of anguish. Sister, you can't leave us now. We need you. Milam needs you. Velgrind, tears streaming down her face, held Lucia's other hand. Lucia, please stay. We can't do this without you. Lucia smiled faintly, her gaze softening as she looked at each of them. My dear family, you are strong. You will endure. Veldanava, Rudra, Velgrind, my love for you will never fade. As she spoke, her strength continued to ebb away. She lay down on the ground, her head resting in Veldanava's lap. He held her close, his eyes brimming with tears, a rare display of emotion for the godlike being. Lucia, Veldanava whispered, his voice breaking. I cannot bear to lose you. Lucia's hand reached up to touch his face. My dearest, I will always be with you, in your heart and in Milam. She is our legacy, our love made flesh. With her final breath, Lucia's eyes closed, and her body went still. Veldanava, overcome with despair, held her tightly, his tears falling freely. Reinhard, who had been watching from a respectful distance, felt a pang of sorrow. Despite his often cold demeanor, the sight of his father's anguish moved him deeply. He understood the weight of loss, and though he rarely showed it, he empathized with Veldanava's pain. Rudra and Velgrind, their faces wet with tears, stood by in silent mourning. The joy of Milam's birth was overshadowed by the tragic loss of Lucia. The family was united in their grief, each of them feeling the profound void left by her passing. Reinhard stepped forward, his presence a steadying force in the midst of their sorrow. He placed a hand on Veldanava's shoulder. Father, her sacrifice was not in vain. Milam will carry her spirit and strength. Veldanava looked up at Reinhard, his eyes filled with gratitude and sorrow. Thank you, Reinhard. Your words bring some comfort in this dark hour. Reinhard nodded solemnly. Milam is a symbol of your love and Lucia's courage. She will need all of us to guide her. As the family gathered around the fallen Lucia, they made a silent vow to protect and nurture Milam, honoring Lucia's memory and the love she had bestowed upon them. The birth of Milam was both a gift and a responsibility, one that they would carry with them as they faced the future together. Dot, 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 dot. A few days after Lucia's death, the atmosphere within the realm shifted. Veldanava's health began to deteriorate, a gradual but undeniable decline. The loss of his beloved had taken a toll on his immortal essence, and even his divine power seemed unable to fully stave off the effects. In an attempt to prepare for the future and strengthen his brother-in-law, Veldanava decided to trade his ultimate skill, Justice King Michael, to Rudra in exchange for Rudra's ultimate skill, Lord of Vows Uriel. The exchange was a symbolic passing of power and responsibility, ensuring that Rudra would have the strength and resolve to protect Milam and maintain balance in the world. The three true dragons, Velzard, Velgrind, and Veldora, remained by Veldanava's side during his final days. Their presence was a testament to the bond they shared, and they did their best to provide comfort and support. Velzard, the ice dragon, often sat in silence, her icy demeanor softened by the sorrow she felt. Velgrind, the scorched dragon, stayed close, her fiery spirit tempered by a deep sense of duty. Veldora, the storm dragon, who was often more boisterous, now showed a rare quiet strength, his loyalty unwavering. On the last day of Veldanava's life, the atmosphere was heavy with an unspoken understanding. It was time to say goodbye. Reinhard, who had been away for much of this time, finally made his way to his father's side. He entered the chamber where Veldanava lay, a mixture of resolve and sorrow in his eyes. Father, Reinhard said quietly, approaching the bed where Veldanava rested. The room was filled with a subdued light, and the presence of the true dragons created an almost sacred atmosphere. Veldanava looked up at Reinhard, a weak but warm smile forming on his lips. Reinhard, my son, I am glad you came. Reinhard's expression softened slightly, though the weight of the moment was evident. I had to be here. For you. Veldanava reached out, and Reinhard took his hand, feeling the frailty that had taken hold of the once mighty god. You have always been strong, Reinhard. Even now, I see the strength and determination in you. Reinhard nodded, his eyes never leaving his father's face. You have taught me well, father. I will honor your legacy. Veldanava's gaze grew distant for a moment, as if he were looking beyond the present. Milam, she will need guidance, strength, and love. Promise me, Reinhard, that you will watch over her. I promise, Reinhard said, his voice firm. Milam will have my protection and my guidance. She will not face the challenges of this world alone. A sense of peace seemed to settle over Veldanava. Thank you, my son. You have always been my pride. As the moments passed, Veldanava's breathing grew more labored. The true dragons, sensing the end was near, moved closer, their presence a final act of solidarity and love. Velzard placed a hand on Veldanava's shoulder, Velgrind held his other hand, and Veldora stood at his feet, his gaze fixed on his brother. Reinhard, feeling the weight of the impending loss, leaned in and spoke softly. Father, rest now. You have done enough. He raised his hand and manifested his Longinusland's testament before piercing the chest of Veldanava. For he loved Veldanava the most, he will be the one to spell his destruction. That attack destroyed the spirit and soul of Veldanava, leaving no chance for revival. The true dragons were shocked by his action but somehow understood that it is his best action he can do for his father. They know of their brother's wish to stay with his wife's side on the other side, they will respect his wish and let Reinhard do what he wants. Reinhard stood up, his expression a mixture of grief and determination. The world had lost its greatest protector, but he would ensure that Veldanava's legacy lived on. Turning to the true dragons, he nodded, a silent acknowledgement of their shared loss and the responsibility that now rested on their shoulders. As they mourned the passing of their leader, friend, and brother, they also prepared for the future. Milam's birth marked a new chapter, one that they would navigate together, carrying the memory of Veldanava with them as a guiding light. As the true dragons and Reinhard mourned the passing of Veldanava, the atmosphere was heavy with sorrow and a profound sense of loss. Rudra, devastated by the loss of both his sister Lucia and his brother-in-law Veldanava, found himself overwhelmed by grief. The responsibility of taking care of Milam, which he had initially promised to uphold, seemed insurmountable in his current state. Velgrind, sensing her brother's turmoil, took Rudra's hand and gently led him away from the scene. Come, Rudra, we need to find solace and gather our strength, she whispered, her own voice laced with sorrow. Rudra nodded, his eyes hollow and distant. Yes, Velgrind, I can't do this right now. As Rudra and Velgrind left, Reinhard stood in the room, gazing at the tiny, powerful being in his arms, Milam, the embodiment of his father's and Lucia's legacy. He felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders, understanding that the task of raising and guiding Milam now fell to him. With a determined expression, Reinhard approached the body of his father. He knelt beside Veldanava and placed a hand on his chest, speaking softly. Father, I will honor your memory and your wishes. Milam will be cared for, and your legacy will endure. Reinhard then turned to the true dragons. I will take care of Milam. It is my duty and my promise to our father. Velzard and Veldora nodded in agreement, their expressions a mixture of sadness and trust. They knew Reinhard was capable of fulfilling this responsibility, and they respected his decision. Reinhard gently transferred Milam into Velzard's arms for a moment, then carefully lifted Veldanava's body. I will make sure his body does not go to waste, he said, his voice filled with resolve. It will be used and honored as it deserves. With Veldanava's body secured, Reinhard took Milam back into his arms. He felt a deep sense of duty and a fierce determination to protect and guide his sister, just as he had promised. Reinhard then took one last look at the room, the place where so much had changed, and then began the journey back to the Gladsheimer with Milam and Veldanava's body. The path ahead was uncertain, but Reinhard was resolute. He would raise Milam with the strength and wisdom imparted by their father, ensuring that she would grow into the powerful and influential being she was destined to become. As Reinhard walked through the portal that connected their realms, he sent a silent message to the heavens and the world itself. He would carry the weight of his father's legacy, guiding Milam and honoring Veldanava's memory. With every step, he felt the gravity of his new role, but he was undeterred. Reinhard was prepared to face whatever challenges lay ahead, for the sake of his family and the future of their world.